Most people get isekai'd into the bodies of noble ladies or pampered princesses. But nope, she drew the short straw and woke up as a wicked stepmother. Talk about a nightmare start. She's got a husband colder than the Arctic, and a stepson destined to grow up into a total psycho obsessed with locking people in cages. After a full 24 hours of freaking out, Lilia finally accepted her fate. No time for a pity party. If she wanted to survive this plot, she had to play nice with the fam. But here's the million-dollar question. Who does she charm first? The ice block duke or the future villain? Suddenly, voices drifted in from the window. She glanced down, and bam, she spotted a tiny, adorable boy in the garden. She was shook. If that was the young master of the mansion, there was no way he was the psycho stepson. That precious little bean looked nothing like the cruel, twisted monster described in the novel. Decision made. Team Sun wins over the husband. But there was a snag: she had zero experience raising kids, and she had no clue where to start. The original lore stated the protagonist had beef with his mom, so her only move was creeping in the shadows with her maid, watching from a distance. Looking at such a cute kid, she couldn't wrap her head around why the original Lilia abandoned him. She was lost in thought until, oops, busted. Lilia had to step out, waving awkwardly. She expected a reaction, but he just ghosted her completely and turned to leave. She couldn't let this chance slide. She dropped to a crouch and grabbed his sleeve. Cadell, hey, can you stay a sec? She didn't expect him to slap her hand away, screaming, I don't want a mom. He tried to bolt but tripped, falling right in front of this suddenly nice mother figure. Cadell was totally confused. His internal monologue was racing. You usually ignore me, so why are you acting so fake right now? He shouted his piece and stormed off, leaving Lilia standing there with a confused look on her face. She spent the rest of the night overthinking the encounter, wondering if Cadell's scrape was okay. Clearly, their relationship was deeper in the trash than she thought. Rushing in was just going to scare him off. She needed to play the long game. Spotting some stationery on the table, a light bulb went off. She handed a letter to the maid for delivery, hoping to slide into Cadell's good graces without the pressure. The next day, Cadell woke up to find a gift sitting there. His mouth said whatever, but his hands were already reaching for it. He tore it open, revealing a teddy bear, a letter, and some ointment in a pink box. The letter was dripping with Lilia's newfound motherly affection. He couldn't figure it out. Why was the mom who always treated him like a nuisance suddenly acting so sweet? He was so distracted, he didn't even notice someone else was in the room. Muttering under his breath, he stashed the letter in his drawer, but the butler saw the whole thing. He knew Cadell kept every letter. He asked if Cadell wanted the gift thrown out. Classic tsundere move. Cadell stared at the teddy bear and hesitated. He told the butler to just toss the box and put the plushie in his room. Lying through his teeth while pouting, he explained, It's not 'cause mom gave it to me. I just happen to like bears, okay? He also ordered the servant to send a reply. Meanwhile, Lilia got the response and was hyped, thinking her efforts were finally paying off. She tore it open only to read, Don't send any more letters or gifts. Savage. But she thought, hey, even a rejection is technically a reply. Baby steps. Conquer the husband? Nah, that's on pause. Cadell is the main mission now. She asked for his location. The maid said he was in the garden. She did a quick fit check and sprinted over. Sure enough, there he was, sitting all alone, staring at a pile of untouched pastries. Lilia strolled up. Were you waiting for me? He blushed, looking all proud. No, I just always come here. Lilia replied, Cool, then I'll just watch you eat from back here. Won't disturb your vibe. She slipped behind him, watching him munch on sweets like a total fangirl, thinking, Cadell is looking extra adorable today. 1 week later, Lilia stared at a desk piled high with party invites. She aggressively scribbled generic no-thanks replies. Socializing? Ain't nobody got time for that. She was booked and busy with a new project, an observation diary. Today, he frowned at me so cute. When I talked to Cadell and he ignores me, also incredibly cute. Today, I waved, and he actually nodded. Adorable. This obsession was getting so intense even the maid wondered. Did the madam hit her head? The maid hesitated, then suggested showing the diary to the young master. Lilia's eyes lit up. You think if Cadell sees this, we'll bond? She grabbed the book and couldn't wait to show him, leaving the maid looking totally bewildered. Armed with a bear-shaped lollipop, Lilia sneaked into Cadell's room, but realized the decor didn't look like a kid's room at all. She spotted the teddy bear she gave him sitting obediently on the bed. Caught red-handed, he clumsily tried to hide it with a pillow. I just haven't had time to throw it out yet. Why are you here? Lilia, beaming like she struck gold, held up the notebook. Wanna see? I wrote it myself. Watching him read it while turning beet red, Lilia thought he was just too pure for this world. No way could I ever cage another human being. Just then, a flock of doves burst across the skyline, wings cutting through the clouds. She decided to test the waters, asking Cadell casually, hypothetically, say you found a gorgeous bird. What's the move? I'd builded a fancy cage, he replied effortlessly. Lilia beamed, thinking, "Aw, he's sweet. He wants to give it a safe little home." But then Cadell dropped the other shoe. "Since it's so beautiful, I'd have to lock it up tight. Can't have it flying away from me." Pretty things exist to be admired, right? Lilia froze. Her internal sweet boy narrative just crashed and burned. He tilted his head, eyes wide and innocent. "Why the silence?" she stammered, forcing a nervous laugh. "Oh, nothing. Just didn't expect that answer." Inside, she was screaming. "What is wrong with this kid? Has he been a budding sociopath since birth?" Damage control mode activated. From that day on, her brain was on loop. How do I fix him? She was so zoned out she didn't hear the maid calling her name. Total radio silence. Finally, the maid asked, "Ma'am, something on your mind?" Lilia debated spilling the tea, but decided to keep her mouth shut. Big mistake. The maid started playing detective. Is this because the master is coming home soon? Ding, light bulb moment. The master, her husband. Parenting is a two-player game, right? They needed to co-op this disaster. Perfect. She'd use the kid requires discipline card to break the ice with him. Plotting commenced. Operation, get close to hubby for the sake of the psycho son. So, she asked, when's the Duke touching down? Within 48 hours, the maid replied. We'll be packing up to leave. Lilia blinked, confused. Excuse me? Moving out? Why? Well, the maid smiled. You've been doting on the young master lately. The vibes in the mansion have totally shifted. So, I was hoping you'd greet the master personally this time. Lilia didn't know whether to laugh or have a mental breakdown. Just how toxic was the OG Lilia's marriage? Still, she didn't hesitate. Done. Tell the staff to prep. We're throwing a massive welcome party. A broken home builds a broken kid, and her adorable son could absolutely not grow up to be a bloodthirsty tyrant. She was his mom now. Saving him was non-negotiable. The maid practically squealed with joy and dashed off to set the stage. Lilia hummed a little tune, breezing through paperwork. Then a horrifying realization hit. Wait, what is my husband's name? Meanwhile, the Duke trudged toward the estate, mood dark. He braced himself for the usual greeting. A door slammed in his face. Here we go again. He doubted she'd even be there, but as the mansion came into view, is that a crowd at the entrance? He stopped dead. First time in history anyone actually cared he was home. And he heard it. Welcome home, Duke. I've been waiting for you. Lilia stood there, beaming. The Duke froze, brain short-circuiting. Finally, he whispered, I'm hallucinating. Someone get a medic. Now. His aide nudged him. Not a dream, sir. She's real. The Duke blinked, still not buying it. He stared at her like she was an alien until she chirped that he was letting the cold in. Did she hit her head? Is that it? He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever trap this was, and stepped inside. Lilia immediately signaled the maid. Clear the room. Give us a minute. The Duke scanned the area, paranoid. Where is everyone? Then he locked eyes with his wife's blinding smile. He'd never seen that expression on her face. Before he could stop himself, his hand drifted toward her shoulder. Let's eat, she said brightly. The Duke hesitated. What's the catch? In the dining room, Lilia actually pulled out a chair for him. I have something to discuss. The Duke's grip on the chair tightened, knuckles white. Of course. The act drops. She wants something. That's the only reason she's playing nice. He spent the entire meal sulking in icy silence. Lilia was baffled. Why the mood swing? She tried to break the tension. So, Duke, about that talk. Stone-faced, he shot back. Speak. Lilia scrambled for a topic. The expedition? Must have been brutal, right? He didn't blink. Why ask? Wishing I'd come back in a coffin? Cut the act. What do you want? Lilia pasted a smile on her face, screaming internally. Wow, trust issues much? I want to discuss our son's education. The Duke looked like he'd been slapped. Wait, don't you hate my guts? Why the loving wife routine? No, you've got it wrong. Lilia rushed over to clear the air, maybe a little too fast. She tripped over her own feet, plunging forward. In a blur, the Duke caught her before she hit the floor. She tried to speak, but a sharp pain in her stomach cut her off. Words failed her. The man who was mocking her 5 seconds ago turned pale. Doctor, get in here. What's wrong? Talk to me, he demanded, panic in his voice. Lilia groaned. You have to ask? I threw you a party, and you sat there scowling like a statue. I'm still recovering, you know. My heart can't take your attitude. The Duke looked away, voice dropping to a whisper. But you hate me. Usually when I get this close, you scream at me to get out. He gently took her hand, his eyes sad. You really don't remember, do you? Your hand is freezing. Even if you hate my touch, I need to warm it up. Let's put a pin in that. The doctor burst in, totally shattering the intimate mood. Taking the hint, the Duke made a swift exit. Lilia's master plan? A total flop. By the crack of dawn the next morning, she woke up stressing over yesterday's disaster. That heartwarming dinner clearly backfired, because her stomach was doing flips. She needed a plan B, fast. Suddenly a knock at the door. Confusion hit her. Didn't she order a strict do not disturb? If someone was daring to interrupt now, it had to be Cadell or the Duke. Heart racing, she threw open the door to reveal her adorable son, clutching a little bear-shaped lollipop. She tried to play it cool, but internally, she was screaming with joy. He definitely came to check on me. Ignoring her excitement, Cadell turned his head away with a pout and shoved the candy at her. Eat up. It'll make you feel better. She took it with a beaming smile. Thank you, Cadell. His face instantly flushed red. Classic denial mode activated. I didn't want to come, okay? The maid made me. Lilia saw right through him, but decided to play along, telling him she was grateful that he stopped by. Face still burning, he stared intently at her. Then, dropping a truth bomb like a tiny adult, he muttered, "If eating with him makes you sick, just stop." Lilia thought he was just worried. She smiled, explaining she just needed to get used to it. But then his tone dropped, dark and serious. "So, you're going to keep eating with him?" She instantly regretted her words. "I'm doing this for you," she thought. Suddenly, Cadell snapped. "Don't you just want to be with Dad? Fine then. Go have every meal with him." He spun around and sprinted away. It hit her he was totally jealous of his own father. She chased him down and pulled him into a hug. "You are the most important thing to me. Time with you matters more than anything in the world." He looked up at her, silent. And that's when she wondered if he still hated her. Surprise attack. He buried his face in her shoulder. Cadell looked up with puppy dog eyes. "Mom, if you're sick, you need to rest. And make sure you eat my chocolates, okay?" Lilia's heart melted. She squeezed him tight. Who knew raising such a sweet kid could bring this much joy? A few days later, Lilia was back on her feet and had whipped up a surprise for Cadell. It was a custom treat she made. After grilling the head chef for tips, fingers crossed he'd like it, heart pounding, she headed to the garden, finding him right where she expected. Seeing her, he immediately asked if she was feeling better. Once they sat down, she revealed the homemade cake. Cadell's eyes practically sparkled. He couldn't wait, grabbing a fork to take a huge bite. But the very next second, his face twisted in horror. With everyone watching, he blurted out, "This is disgusting." But the moment he realized Lilia made it, he started shoveling it into his mouth. Lilia tried to stop him, but he wouldn't quit. "I'm fine. I actually love it," he mumbled through mouthfuls. After polishing off a slice, he wiped his face and asked for seconds. Lilia stared at him, misty-eyed. Psychotic villain protagonist? Yeah, right. He's just a sweet, normal kid. The next day, Lilia decided to get back on track with her plan. Get close to the husband for the sake of the son. Hyped up, she knocked on the study door. The Duke's assistant answered. Lilia asked carefully, "There's something I need to clear up. Can we speak privately?" She didn't expect a cold shutdown. The Duke refused, claiming he was swamped, and he didn't stop there. "Didn't you hear me? I'm busy. Please leave." Reading the room like a pro, the assistant moved to step out, but the Duke shut that down too. "Not necessary. Get back to work." Defeated, Lilia had no choice but to walk away. Guess she'd need a better excuse next time. The following day, Lilia was in her room, trying to pick a bedtime story for Cadell, when a maid handed her a letter. An invitation to Marquis Fenwick's birthday bash, just as she was. Confused, didn't she decline all these social events? It suddenly clicked. She missed this one because she was distracted chatting with the maid. Rookie mistake. A birthday party? Suddenly, the maid lit up like a Christmas tree. "Wait, are you planning a birthday party? For the young master? It's a bit early, but I'm on it." Meanwhile, the name Marquis Fenwick rang a bell. Lilia froze. Wait, isn't he the second male lead from the original novel? The guy Cadell is destined to kill? A wave of anxiety hit her. Cadell won't kill him in this timeline, right? No, I'm raising him to be a normal, sweet kid. Meanwhile, the Duke was still secretly waiting for his wife to visit him, ever since that incident in the carriage. She's acting totally sus lately. Used to be the ice queen, cold, distant, never cracked a smile. But now, she's inventing reasons to crash his space, grinning like she's up to something. He's low-key obsessing over whether she'll show up today. Dude's staring so hard he lets ink bleed all over his book without noticing. His assistant reads the room. "You want me to check if the missus is here?" The Duke shoots up from his chair. "It's too stuffy in here," he lies, bolting for the door and leaving his poor assistant drowning in paperwork alone. But he pauses at the exit just to say, "If you need her, check the garden." He gets near the studio and boom, here's Cadell screaming, "Liar!" Then Lilia's voice cuts in. "Cadell, why call Mom a liar? The kid is fuming. You always run to Dad first. I thought I was your number one. You like being with Dad that much?" The Duke overhears this, and his heart does a literal backflip. But before he can even enjoy the moment, Lilia drops the truth bomb. "Are you kidding? Being with you is the best." She asks if he wants to crash Marquis Fenwick's birthday bash. Cadell asks if they need a gift. She nods yes, and suddenly, Waterworks. He bursts into tears. You never get me a birthday present. Lilia gets a sudden flashback from the original body's memories. On his birthday, the kid just wanted a happy birthday from Mom, but got totally ghosted. She chokes back the feels. My bad. Mom messed up, but I've got you now. Never leaving you solo again. Takes some serious effort. To get him to stop sobbing, Lilia asks, should we throw a massive party for you? He tries to play it cool and say no, but the second he hears giant cake, his eyes light up. Still acting tough, he pouts. Whatever. Lilia didn't realize the gift he actually craved was just her attention. Thinking about how neglected he was, the guilt hits different, so she says, give me tomorrow. We'll throw a party in your favorite garden. The Duke, lurking outside the door. Here's the whole plan. Tomorrow, garden party. It's on. He forces his assistant into overtime hell to clear his schedule early. The next day, he shows up to the garden early, only to realize he wasn't even invited. Cadell is blowing out candles while everyone cheers. Lilia feels eyes on her. She spins around, locks eyes with the Duke, and rushes over. Your Excellency, what are you doing here? He asks awkwardly what the vibe is. She points at the crowd, explaining, it's a birthday bash. Cadell hates crowds, so it's strictly VIPs only. Suddenly, the Duke hits her with, why are you acting so weird lately? Since she only has glitchy memories of the original owner, his interrogation leaves her stumped. She doesn't know what to say, but she pivots to inviting him to co-parent. The Duke swerves the topic completely. You keep calling our son by his name. So why am I still just Duke to you? Do you not even know my name? She freezes. Lilia is shook. She literally asked the maid earlier, but since she never says it, she totally blanked on his full name. She tries to play dumb to escape, but he's pressing her. Panic mode. She blurts out his nickname, Kieran. His heart goes from 0 to 100 instantly. Kept a poker face, though, and looks away silently. Lilia thinks she messed up. Is it okay if I call you Kieran? Can I? The guy is deaf to the world now, mind racing. She went from Duke to Kieran. Is she catching feelings? Face bright red. He mumbles, got stuff to do, gotta go, and walks away like a malfunctioning robot. Duke vanishes. Cadell sprints over, grabs her skirt. What did you guys talk about? Nothing, she replies. She wonders, is he bummed Dad didn't wish him a happy birthday? She hadn't even considered that angle. She crouches down. Are you upset that Mom didn't invite Dad? He wanted to celebrate, but he's super busy and had to run. Kid couldn't care less about Dad's congrats. He just wanted Mom to come back and eat cake together. Cadell finally digs into the cake with everyone watching. He doesn't forget to ask if she'll celebrate with him later. His cuteness level is off the charts. Lilia beams, every year, Cadell, and your parties are gonna get way bigger. Suddenly, tears drop. An inner voice whispers, I hope you can forgive me, just this once. Even though he couldn't hear her thoughts, Cadell saw the tears and panic mode activated. He stammered, I heard sugar is the ultimate mood booster. It's, really good. Try it. Lilia parted her lips, accepting the cake from Cadell's hand. She couldn't tell if the flavor came from the frosting or those weird surfacing memories. The flashbacks were fresh, yet she felt a heavy guilt she shouldn't be this happy. A few days later, Lilia finally cleared her inbox of social replies. Problem was, she didn't know who to visit first. Cadell was already salty about her being late, demanding that next time, he had to be priority number 1. Meanwhile, her daily routine involved checking on the Duke. And surprise, surprise, he also insisted she come to him first. Lilia was losing her mind over them. She only has one body, folks. She can't be in 2 places at once. While she was spiraling, the maid pitched a method, which led straight to this awkward scene. 3 people, 1 room, dead silence. Lilia fake-sipped her tea, wondering how her life became a silent film. She desperately needed to break the ice. Who knew barely 2 words would make them both snap their heads like owls? Why call me? Lilia asked, feeling the cringe creeping up. I'm not summoning you, Duke. Please, call me Kieran. He dropped the formal title, clearly loving the sound of that name way too much. It was affectionate. Superficial, maybe. With the Duke staring daggers into her soul, Lilia had to explain she was actually addressing Cadell. She decided to ghost the Duke's gaze and turn to Cadell. Remember we agreed to hit up that celebration? Cadell pumped his chest, looking proud. You mean the one where it's just the 2 of us? He put extra heavy emphasis on the 2 of us part. The Duke, sitting right there, heard that, and snap. His pen exploded in his grip. Suddenly, nobody was in the mood to work. Lilia and Cadell agreed he needed to play nicely with kids his own age. Cadell nodded, accepting the terms way too easily. He was being so obedient, she couldn't help but shower him with praise. But before she could finish, she was interrupted by a paper tornado. Documents flew across the room, accompanied by the Duke's aggressive coughing fit. Lilia saw the chaos and immediately rushed to comfort him. You okay? Need a medic? The Duke grabbed her hand, staring deep. Do you like your son that much? The question threw her off. Of course, he's our son. Boom. Both guys lit up. One hooked on the word our, the other thrilled she claimed my son. Honestly, didn't expect them to be this easy to please. Compared to their initial icy vibes, they were acting like totally different people. Next day, birthday party drip. They coordinated outfits, but Cadell sneakily ripped off his tie. He went full clingy mode, begging Lilia to tie it for him. The second she finished the knot, a shadow appeared behind her. Jump scare time. The Duke showed up, making up some lame excuse about outside business. It was so clumsy, even his assistant was shaking his head in secondhand embarrassment. But the aide knew his job. Clutch moment incoming. Madam, this is wild. Your route matches the Duke's perfectly. Why not carpool? Cadell immediately vetoed it. Lilia passed too. She figured the carriage was too cramped. But sensing the weird energy, she assumed the Duke just wanted some father-son bonding time. And Cadell was just being shy. As a mom, it was her duty to play wingman, right? So she suggested a separate carriage just for the Duke and Cadell. Instantly, both their faces froze over. Glitch mode. They immediately spun around and walked in opposite directions. Lilia got that sinking feeling she definitely said the wrong thing. Again, she quietly hopped into her carriage, but Cadell was still radiating pure saltiness. Time for damage control. Lilia dropped a hint. I heard Marquis Fenwick's party has absolutely legendary desserts. Bullseye, mentioned sugar, and his eyes sparkled. He couldn't hide the hype. Then he remembered he was supposed to be mad. He turned away, mumbling he wasn't a kid obsessed with snacks. Before long, they pulled up to the Fenwick mansion. Cadell hopped out, still playing the gentleman, helping Mom down. Inside, it was a candy wonderland. The Marchioness Fenwick greeted them, but Lilia only had eyes for the memory sphere. It was basically a magical Polaroid camera. Just as she was about to ask where to buy one, a flame flickered near her face. Cadell, stone-faced, threatened, take a pic of me, and you're done. Too bad. He looked so cute, but the memories would have to stay in her head. Lilia followed the Marchioness to the garden. She didn't even get to sit down before the passive-aggressive roasting started. You're from the Rovalis house. Since we're all here, quick question. I bought a dog, stupidly expensive, but it won't obey its master. She locked eyes with Lilia. What's your take, Lady Rovalis? Lilia blinked, totally confused. She had zero clue about the subtext but decided to give genuine pet advice. Maybe try patience? Teach it gently so it learns to behave. The two bystanders couldn't help but cut in. Nah, why waste effort on a dog? If it doesn't listen, get rid of it immediately. Doesn't matter the price tag. If it forgets its place, replace it. That's when it clicked for Lilia. They weren't talking about puppies. Luckily, after dropping that heavy shade, they let the topic die. Lilia was fully prepared to ghost them, but who knew the hefty troublemaker was thirsty for round two? I bet if the Duke is hosting, you could squeeze me in. Lilia played the innocent card, without his stamp of approval. My hands are tied. The Marchioness cut in, smooth as silk. I have a pet parrot, just like that. Super cute. But the vocabulary? Atrocious. Spouts garbage for no reason. No clue where it picked up such trashy behavior. Lilia instantly clocked the vibe the Marchioness was an ally. She played along, asking how one fixes a bird like that. What can you do? It's just a bird. Not like I can toss it out for a few foul words. It's not like it's cheating on me with a royal knight behind my back. Hearing this, the hefty woman turned bright red, totally exposed. Realizing her dirty laundry was aired out, she stammered something about urgent business. She bolted from the garden, her little minions scrambling after her. Lilia's respect for the Marchioness just skyrocketed to infinity. Only the queens remained. Meanwhile, Cadell was solo at the snack table, demolishing a pecan pie. Until some random kid crashed his piece, Cadell gave him the side eye. If not for Lilia's specific warnings, he wouldn't waste breath on such a total noob. Still, he graciously slid over a slice to share. Mom said to be a social butterfly, so Cadell sat there, suffering through the kids yapping in silence. But when the kid bragged about his mom praising him daily, Cadell's competitive streak snapped. He couldn't let that slide. My mom praises me so much, it's actually annoying. Your mom? Please. My mom definitely hypes me up way more, the kid argued. They spent 10 minutes flex battling about their mothers, until a chubby bully interrupted the flow. He pointed a greasy finger at Cattle. My mom says his blood is trashed here. Playing with him is a curse. Cattle just stared. Coldly, he asked. You ready to stand behind those words? The bully panicked, breaking into a cold sweat. Just then, the woman who fled earlier returned for her son. Seeing the family resemblance, Cadell couldn't help but roast them, noting the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Across the lawn, the moms were still swapping parenting hacks. Suddenly, a splitting migraine hit Lilia. Alien memories flooded in, a man pointing at a tiny Lilia, screaming, I'm using you to climb the social ladder. It was the original host body's trash father. Shaking off the trauma, she went to grab Cadell to leave, walking back to the garden. She worried if Cuddle had started a fight. The novel's dark plot twists were still fresh in her mind. Then, the news hit. Cadell was crying. She sprinted to the scene. Seeing her, Cadell, face wet with tears, dove into her arms. Who made my baby cry? Lilia could handle insults, but messing with Cadell? That's a death sentence. Lady Chadwick, you better start explaining. The woman trembled, stuttering through her excuse. My son made a tiny mistake, said your boy had bad blood. You know how kids joke around. Lilia's voice dropped to sub-zero. You think that's ignorable? I'm saying this once. Apologize to my son. Seeing no escape route, the woman grabbed her son and forced a sorry out of him. The kid had no choice, mumbling a sad apology. But then, Lady Chadwick tried to reach out and touch Cadell. Lilia immediately blocked her, shielding him. I don't let child beaters touch my son. My husband will handle the rest. To Lilia, kids were innocent canvases. The fault lay with garbage parents who didn't teach them right from wrong. Negligence like that is unforgivable. That is why you get zero mercy. She scooped Cadell up and whisked him into the carriage. She comforted him nonstop. She thought the novel's obsessive villain would be tough as nails, but realized he was just a fragile little boy. Guilt washed over her. I'm sorry. Mommy should have been there. Even with teary eyes, Cadell didn't forget to brag. I totally got along with them, though. Those words shattered her heart. Since arriving, she'd tried to fill the void of love he never had, never understanding why the original Lilia was so cold. In her heart, the plot didn't matter anymore. He wasn't a villain. He was her son. Suddenly, Cadell pouted. I kept my promise. Where's my loot? Is there no reward? She teased that there wasn't. He looked devastated until she revealed the real prize. One wish. Anything he wanted. He lit up instantly. His demand? A bedtime story every single night. Lilia was stunned. That was his big wish? Cadell explained simply. That his friend Ladius said his mom read to him daily. That's when Lilia understood. She was comparing herself to the other moms, telling him, I really hope our Cadell has a blast next time too. By the time they rolled back to the ducal mansion, the sun was setting, and the air was getting warmer. Lilia suggested a boating trip to beat the heat. Cadell's face lit up the second he heard the word together. But deep down, he hoped together didn't include Dad. He wanted a solo mission with just Mom. However, Lilia stuck to the script. A harmonious family is key to raising a well-adjusted kid. She was determined to make it work for Cadell. Back in her room that night, she finally had a moment to process the drama. She couldn't wrap her head around Lady Chadwick's hostility or why she kept calling the Duke a barbarian. She figured the original owner must have been forced into a loveless marriage with Kieran, explaining the hatred for both husband and son. When she transmigrated, she came with zero memories, just some lingering habits. The more Lilia thought about it, the weirder it felt. She had no choice but to ask the maid, what's the real meaning behind the barbarian label in this empire? Who knew that question would terrify the poor girl? Trembling, she explained that Chadwick's son claimed Cadell had barbarian blood, and that touching him would inflict a curse. Since she couldn't remember much after the accident, she used that as cover to ask what that actually meant. The maid was floored. She didn't realize Lilia had amnesia this whole time. No wonder her personality had done a 180. Lilia spotted the fear in the maid's eyes, terrified that if her memories returned, she'd revert to her old, cruel self. Lilia firmly shut that down, insisting she wouldn't change. Cadell was her priority now. But the maid panicked, insisting the Duke could never find out. If he knew she was only being kind, because she lost her memory, it would break him, and he'd lock his heart away for good. The Duke doesn't hate you, my lady. If he did, he wouldn't have spent a fortune in gold to marry you. Lilia was completely shook. She never expected the original owner had been sold off by her own father. She assumed Kieran kidnapped her. Turns out, Kieran was the one who rescued the original owner from a toxic family situation. She decided to have the maid keep her updated on the investigation. After the maid left, Lilia tried to dig up the original owner's memories, but came up empty. Cadell was a kid starving for affection. Even though he acted like he didn't care, he had always craved his mother's love. The Duke seemed cold, but he was quietly looking out for them from the shadows. They were both good people. Why was the original owner so toxic to them? 1 week later, summer hit. The maid rushed in, buzzing with excitement. Lady Chadwick had been stripped of her title. Lilia didn't expect karma to move that fast. The maid stepped closer to drop even bigger news. Lady Chadwick was caught having an affair with a guard. And that brat from the party? He isn't the Count's biological son. Marquesa Fenwick was spilling straight facts at the party. No wonder. Lady Chadwick fled in shame. She deserved every bit of it. Lilia didn't waste any more energy on that drama. She turned and asked where Cadell was. Hearing he was in the library, she grabbed some desserts and went to find him. But when she walked in, the library was dead silent. She called out Cadell's name, Silence. Finally, she spotted him curled up in a corner, asleep. She planned to wake him up and move him to a bed, but the moment she touched his forehead, it was scorching. Panic mode activated. Was this a fever or his fire magic acting up? Terrified, she scooped him up and screamed for a doctor. At the last gathering, Ladius had bragged that his mom read him bedtime stories every night, and that when he was sick, his mom always held his hand. That was a feeling Cadell had never experienced. He secretly wished his mom would be by his side when he was sick too. Even though he yearned for it, on the surface, he mocked Ladius for being frail. He told himself he wasn't weak like that kid, convinced his mom's love was stronger. He never expected to actually get sick from his own magic going haywire. Although the doctor said Cadell was only in temporary pain, Lilia was a wreck because his body was burning up like a furnace. The doctor explained the fire magic inside him was surging, and his body couldn't handle the sudden spike. He could only offer basic treatment. Lilia wasn't having it. She decided to nurse him personally. That night, the fever had Cadell in a chokehold. He tossed and turned, sobbing about the heat and his splitting headache. Watching him suffer absolutely shattered Lilia's heart. Through the haze, his eyes fluttered open, locking onto hers. Mom, she froze. She never expected that single word to hit so hard, especially not like this. Through sniffles, he confessed the truth. He didn't fit in with the other kids. He looked terrified that Lilia might hate him for it, promising to try harder next time. Lilia didn't hesitate. She instantly pulled him into a tight squeeze. Mom could never hate you, Cadell. I'm just glad you remember our promise. She assured him no more forced playdates. Your happiness is the only thing on the agenda. It took a few minutes, but Lilia finally managed to calm the teary-eyed little guy down. She tucked him snug under the covers, reminding him that rest was the secret weapon for healing, and swore that the second he was back on his feet, that boating trip was happening. But Cadell threw a curveball. He wasn't sleeping until he heard Mom read a bedtime story. Lilia was a bit confused, but grabbed the book anyway. Her soothing voice worked like magic. Cadell drifted off almost immediately. Suddenly, the door creaked open. It was Kieran, looking confused about why she was still up. Lilia instantly put a finger to her lips, signaling him to keep it down. She hadn't expected him to be awake either, assuming he came purely out of worry for their son. She whispered for him to relax. She was pulling an all-nighter right here. Kieran looked totally lost. The old Lilia? She wouldn't be caught dead doing this. She shrugged, claiming she was trying out a new vibe. He pressed her. But you used to despise us. Why did you get so angry when Cadell cried the other day? Then, out of nowhere, he asked to hold her hand. Lilia extended it, skeptical, but he doubled down with the interrogation. You never used to let me touch you. Now you use my name. You let me hold your hand. Did that accident wipe your memory? Lilia panicked. She hadn't expected her cover to be blown so fast. She was terrified the truth would crush him. Kieran's mind was racing too. He figured if the past was erased, maybe that explained why this new Lilia was actually kind to him. He was starving for that smile, and the sweet way she said his name. He desperately hoped she'd stay this sweet before any old memories came back to ruin it, even if it was just temporary. Faced with his raw honesty, Lilia felt the air leave her lungs as he pulled her into a bone-crushing hug. She looked him dead in the eye. If that's what you want, consider it done. I know you're a sweet, thoughtful husband. You only act cold because you're terrified that if I get my memory back, I'll go back to hating you, and that I'll forget this connection we're building. Kieran looked struck. She had read his mind perfectly. Hearing her promise that memories wouldn't change how she felt about him finally let him breathe a little easier. He decided to get vulnerable. I'm terrified this is all going to vanish. If you stop talking to me, I honestly won't know how to function. Seeing him so unguarded, Lilia couldn't help but chuckle. This guy was light years away from the sarcastic, icy Duke she met at the start. Kieran explained he had no clue she had lost her memory back then. He thought she was just mocking him, now that he knew the truth. Everything made sense. Suddenly, he dropped a massive confession. I'll always wait for your smile. Even when you're freezing me out, I still love you. No matter how indifferent you were, that smile of yours, it still melts me. Lilia turned bright red at the sudden romantic attack. Stuttering, she told him to back off a bit. Kieran, seeing her flustered, playfully leaned in closer. Lilia frantically changed the subject. Didn't you come to check on Cadell? He replied. I came for Cadell, but I'm also worried about you. Lilia grumbled that he used to dodge her, claiming he was too busy whenever she visited his study. Kieran patiently explained the tragedy of it. He wanted to see her, but he was scared the happiness would shatter if he got too close, so he kept his distance. But from now on, no more running. He was all in. Suddenly, Cadell jerked awake. Lilia spun around to check on him. When Cadell moaned about being dizzy, she immediately grabbed a damp towel to cool his forehead. But Cadell wasn't too sick to throw shade at his dad. If it was just Mom here with me, I bet I'd get better way faster. Kieran's dad's senses tingled. He knew what was coming. Sure enough, a second later, Lilia gently asked him to leave. Desperate to prove his worth, Kieran started to say that he had the same symptoms as a kid. He didn't even finish the sentence before Cadell cut him off. Mom, he's so loud. My head hurts. Kieran froze, totally paralyzed by the betrayal. Cadell snuggled into his mom, shooting his dad. A triumphant, mischievous smirk while Kieran stood there, silenced and sidelined. But Lilia shut that down immediately. Cadel needs his beauty sleep, so you need to bounce. He walked away looking totally defeated. The next morning, the second the sun hit the sky, Kieran's staff basically bullied Lilia back to bed. She caught a few Z's, then grinded through some paperwork. Once she cleared her inbox, she grilled the maid about Cadel's status. Suddenly, a knock echoed. Lilia's heart jumped. She thought the Duke was back. But nope, the door swung open and the maid walked in with Cadel. Lilia blinked, totally not expecting her son to pull up. She rushed over to check him for damage. Cadel looked up with big puppy eyes and said he felt lonely without her. That hit Lilia right in the feels. The kid was finally letting his walls down. He peeked up, asking if she was swamped. He just wanted to vibe with her, if she didn't mind. Lilia hesitated, worried he'd die of boredom watching her work. Cadel shook his head. He didn't care. He literally dragged a chair right next to her desk, promising to sit there in silence like a good boy until she finished. And that's exactly what he did until the sky opened up outside. The maid mentioned it's been raining nonstop lately, reminding Lilia she still hadn't taken Cadel on that lake trip. Cadel, munching on a snack, shrugged it off. He said he could go whenever. But Dad's way too busy chasing clout with official business to care about boring stuff like lake dates. Speak of the devil, Kieran spawned right in front of them. Lilia nearly jumped out of her skin. Kieran looked at her with intense eyes. Cadel's right. I'm swamped. But you're my #1 priority. I will make time for you, no matter what. Hearing his dad drop that smooth line, Cadel got salty again. He pivoted to the travel arrangements. Mom, we're definitely riding in the same carriage, right? Lilia didn't even get a chance to answer before the Duke cut in. We're married. Couples ride together. End of story. And just like that, the bickering started. Lilia was caught in the crossfire, totally helpless. She knew she had to fix this vibe, so Cadel could grow up in a non-toxic household. Suddenly, a light bulb went off in her head. She stood up and snapped. Stop fighting right now. If you two can't act right, you both need to get out. They froze, jaws on the floor. Then she turned her laser focus on her husband. Kieran, seriously? You're the dad. Stop beefing with a child. Kieran tried to clap back, but she shut him down with an even harsher scolding. Once she roasted him, she turned to Cadel. You're not off the hook either. You can't talk to your dad like that. Dad actually wants to hang out with you, but he has a job to do. We have to cut him some slack. Cadel looked absolutely crushed by her words. Guilt washed over him. He immediately owned up to his mistake, promising to do better. But Lilia wasn't letting them off that easy. She flashed a mischievous smirk, and they both felt a chill run down their spines. The punishment? They had to hold hands until they could vibe peacefully. Their faces went pale. Lilia ignored their whining and ordered the maid to escort them to the lounge. Once they got there, Kieran decided to hack the system. He scooped Cadel up, claiming it was simpler to hold hands while carrying him. Cadel reluctantly grabbed his dad's hand, telling the maid to make sure Mom heard about this injustice. Kieran marched through the mansion carrying his son, sparking whispers everywhere. Kieran sighed. I forgot how many people work here. Cadel rolled his eyes. If you just let me ride with Mom, we wouldn't be in this mess. Hearing Cadel complain, Kieran finally realized he was beefing with a literal toddler. He'd been acting selfish. No wonder his wife was mad. He swallowed his pride and apologized. Cadel was stunned. He stared at his dad, eyes wide. Then he turned away, blushing. Whatever. Mom still likes me better, Kieran smirked. Maybe, but I'm the one with the ring, the maid trailing them. Couldn't help but smile at their awkward bonding. A bit later, the trio headed back to the room. They found Lilia passed out on her desk. Seeing this, Kieran gently put his son down. He scooped Lilia up to carry her to bed, but was shocked by how light she was. The maid stepped in, whispering, the madam usually eats alone and barely touches her food. She's been dying to have a meal with you, but didn't know how to ask. Hearing that Lilia actually wanted his company, Kieran lit up. He promised to keep it a secret, then got ready to tuck her in. Cadel jumped in immediately. Mom took care of me all night. Now it's my turn to take care of her. So, they carried Lilia to her room together like a team. Cadel stared at his sleeping mom. She's so pretty, and she's super nice to me. Kieran nodded in agreement. She used to be angry at the world, but she's a whole new person now. They stood there praising her, not realizing Lilia was awake and blushing hard enough to explode. She decided to play possum a little longer, but the silence dragged on for what felt like eternity. Finally, she cracked one eyelid open to gingerly scope out the vibe. Big mistake. Both of them were locked onto her like sniper targets. Lilia had no choice but to stage an awkward I just woke up stretch to break the tension. She asked if the boys were finally getting along. Cadel beat his dad to the punch, saying, only 'cause that's what Mom expects. We're totally gonna nail it. If you're still tired, catch some Z's. But can I crash here with you? Lilia instantly scooped him into a hug. But then, the sassy little prince turned his fire back on. Dad, I think you can bounce now. Lilia gave his cheek a gentle pinch, scolding him softly. Hey, remember the rules? Don't talk to your father like that. Cadell grabbed her hand, looking all shy. It's just 'cause I'm obsessed with you, Mom. I want to be your number one. I don't actually hate Dad, mostly. Lilia squeezed him tight, beaming. From the sidelines, Kieran chimed in, asking if there was room for one more in the cuddle pile. Cadell graciously patted the mattress, signaling his permission. And just like that, the family pile-on was complete. Moments later, Cadell drifted off to dreamland. The coziness of it all hit Kieran hard. It felt too perfect to be real. It felt like a hallucination. This was the exact scenario he'd visualized in his head for countless lonely nights. He never thought he'd actually live it. Hearing Lilia laugh and ask if he was free for a boat ride later that week sent him spiraling back to when they were kids, remembering how she used to invite him out to play. Fast forward a few days, he pulled them into a crushing hug, swearing to himself that this time, he wouldn't break his promise. The next morning, the assistant noticed the boss was radiating good vibes the second he walked in. Once he heard about the boating trip, it clicked. So that's why the Duke had been sneaking out to scout locations lately. Mystery solved. Just then, a knock at the office door. Cadell burst in like a cannonball, announcing ruthlessly, "Dad's swamped! Let's come back later!" Ignoring the sabotage, Kieran waved them in. Lilia stepped inside and got straight to the point. Was he still free for that boat ride? The Duke confirmed he'd already scouted the perfect spot and cleared his schedule for next week. It was happening. A few days later, the maid was up at the crack of dawn prepping a picnic feast for the trip. Lilia went all out with her outfit for the big day. Suddenly, Cadell came sprinting toward her. He tugged at her, pleading, "Mom, I want to ride in your carriage." But Lilia saw right through his little game. "Let me guess. Our little Cadell actually wants the carriage away from Dad, right?" Cadell mumbled that he just wanted to be glued to Mom's side. Off in the distance, Kieran was already posted up by the transport. The trio loaded up and rolled out, arriving at the destination in no time. Kieran hopped out first, extending a gentlemanly hand to help his wife down. Plot twist, his hand got snatched by his son instead. Watching the little prince smirk, Lilia cracked up at their secret rivalry. Without a word, Kieran hoisted Cadell up and pulled Lilia into his orbit. She shyly asked how far the walk was. Kieran hit her with a mischievous smirk. "Why? If your legs are tired, want me to carry you too?" Cadell immediately slapped a hand over his dad's mouth to stop the flirting. Seeing their adorable chaos, Lilia was already hyped for the next trip. A bit later, the trio finally hit the lakeside. Lilia noticed he navigated the area like a pro. Kieran admitted he'd been dying to bring her here forever. He said he was finally making good on that old promise. Something about his tone triggered Lilia. It sounded like a vow from a past life. Kieran clarified it was from way back, before the kids existed. Just then, their boat pulled up to the dock. After depositing Cadell safely on board, Kieran turned back to offer a hand to Lilia on the shore. Once settled, Cadell eagerly patted the bench next to him, summoning Mom to his side. Lilia happily took the spot. With the squad secure, they drifted out toward the middle of the lake. Suddenly, Lilia's hands felt empty. Panic mode activated. She realized she'd completely left the picnic basket behind. She was about to tell the boatman to turn around. Kieran asked what was wrong, and she confessed the lunch was still in the carriage. Kieran gave a resigned smile, teasing that she was still a total klutz. Boom, another weird memory flashed. She'd definitely heard that line before. It felt like a callback to their childhood. Lilia looked up and caught the boys looking super worried about her. She quickly waved it off. No way was she going to let a missing sandwich ruin their first family outing. She hugged Cadell and grinned, telling Kieran to take them somewhere fancy instead. Kieran declared he was covering all expenses from here on out. He spun around and directed the boatman to the nearest cliffside village. Lilia was stunned. She had no clue there was a town out here. They docked at the village pier moments later. Stepping off, Kieran casually grabbed Cadell's hand, keeping a poker face. Watching them, Lilia couldn't help but remark that their relationship was finally healing. With both of them reaching out at the exact same second, Lilia didn't stand a chance. She just smiled and grabbed a hand each, becoming the anchor between father and son. Only problem, their high-end noble drip was way too loud for this quiet village. To avoid staring eyes, they needed to go incognito fast. They ducked into the nearest clothing boutique, and the vibe shifted instantly. The owner wasn't just polite, he was practically vibrating with recognition. While the guy launched into a hushed, intense convo with Kieran, Lilia pretended to browse the racks. But let's be real, her ears were tuned straight to their frequency. The chemistry between them screamed old war buddies. Kieran was low-key explaining why they needed to look like average citizens. "I need something to hide this outfit." The owner didn't hesitate, diving into the back and returning with armfuls of modest tunics. He turned to Lilia, holding them up. "Milady, is this style to your liking?" Lilia blinked, realizing she'd been staring a little too hard at their bromance. The owner froze, thinking she hated his taste. Lilia hesitated, debating whether to drop it, but curiosity won out. "You and Kieran, friends?" The guy chuckled, pointing at his own face. "Duchess, you seriously don't recognize this mug?" I used to ride with the Knight's Order, had long hair back then, but I traded the sword for a needle when I found a new dream in this town. I walked away from the Knight's life, and I still feel guilty about breaking my oath to the Duke. That's why his money is no good here. Usually, he rolls solo. I never expected him to show up with the whole squad, you and the young master included. Lilia felt a sudden wave of awkwardness hit her. Desperate to break the tension, she grabbed a tunic and tried to pivot the conversation. Right on cue, Cadell came zooming in, already drowning in an oversized cloak. Lilia quickly apologized to the owner for spacing out earlier. The ex-knight waved it off, grinning. He was just relieved to see the rumors were trash. The Duke and Duchess weren't at each other's throats after all. Kieran stepped out in his disguise, sliding up next to Lilia. Watching them stand together, the shop owner felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It finally looked like his boss was making progress with the girl he'd been secretly crushing on for years. A bit later, they crashed at a nearby restaurant. The smell of hot food filled the air, grounding them after the shopping trip. Lilia turned to Cadell, guilt written all over her face. Sorry, baby. Mommy messed up, so we had to bail on the boat ride early. But Cadell was just vibing. He beamed, telling her this trip was already a 10 out of 10. Then, the food hit the table. Careful, it's lava, Lilia warned. Blow on it first. Cadell nodded, taking his assignment very seriously. He puffed on the spoon like a pro, but instead of eating it, he extended his little arm toward Lilia. That level of sweetness? It was a critical hit to her heart. Kieran watched from the sidelines, totally unprepared for what came next. Lilia turned and fed the next spoonful to Kieran. The man looked like his brain just short-circuited. By the time they hopped back in the carriage, Cadell's battery was at 0. He passed out instantly. Lilia watched him sleep, feeling warm and fuzzy. She whispered to Kieran, "Thanks for the epic day. Seriously, we need to run this back sometime." Kieran gazed at his sleepy wife, making a silent vow. "I'll make sure you have a million days like this." Back at the estate, servants rushed forward to take the sleeping boy. Lilia blocked them. "Nope, I'm carrying him in with Kieran." The assistant panicked, trying to intercept. "But Duke, the paperwork in your study is..." Whack! The maid silenced him with a swift elbow to the ribs before he could ruin the moment. The guy wisely shut his mouth. Upstairs, Cadell groggily woke up. Lilia told him to wash up and crash, assuming she'd tuck him in, but the kid shook his head. "I'm sleeping alone tonight." Lilia froze. Since when? She pressed him for a reason, but his lips were sealed. "It's top secret. Just me and Dad." "Sorry, Mom." He even skipped the bedtime story. "You look tired, Mom. Go rest." Lilia melted, patting his head. "Look at you, all grown up and worrying about me." She turned to Kieran, eyebrows raised. "Okay, spill. What's the deal?" But the guys were a united front. Locked down. Not a word. She figured Cadell was just trying to play matchmaker, giving them space. She reached out, lacing her fingers with Kieran's. To her shock, he flinched. A genuine, nervous tremble ran through his hand. Was he still terrified she'd wake up one day and revert to her old self? She squeezed his hand and asked how he liked the trip. Before he could answer, a glitch in her memory fired. A vision from the past slammed into her brain. The original owner's voice, screaming in agony, "I can't love him. I don't deserve this. It's better if he hates me." Lilia's blood ran cold. Wait a minute. The original Lilia didn't hate him? She was pushing him away on purpose? That explained the ruthless rejection. It was a defense mechanism. Kieran noticed her face pale and panic flared in his eyes. "You're exhausted," he said quickly, dodging the heavy atmosphere. "The carriage ride was too much. You need sleep, now." He was deflecting. He was still walking on eggshells, terrified the real Lilia would return and shatter his world. Lilia didn't let him run. She looked him dead in the eye. "Why did you stay? Even when I was a monster to you. Why? Do you love me? Why is your devotion so blind?" He replied, "To be honest, I'm clueless. Maybe it's that stunning smile of yours. Or perhaps your adorable clumsiness. Sometimes, I just love you unconditionally. Do you believe me?" Lilia lowered her gaze, whispering, "Even if I haven't returned those feelings?" Kieran was blindsided. He didn't expect her to bring this up out of nowhere. Lilia explained, "This whole time feels like a fever dream. I bet you're still terrified my memory will return. Why won't you just give me the truth? Why did our relationship turn out this way?" Kieran opened his mouth to speak, then hesitated. "Maybe I'm being selfish, but I don't want to drag up the past." Lilia refused to let this go, grabbing hold of him, demanding the truth. "Why do you keep running away? I know you wouldn't hurt me. Please, stop hiding." Faced with such a direct confrontation from his wife, Kieran could no longer suppress the surge of emotion in his heart. He pulled her close and kissed her deeply. But even after that, he still refused to spill the secrets of the past. The servants seemed to be under strict gag orders too, keeping their lips sealed about everything that happened before. Feeling stuck, Lilia suddenly remembered the letter Marchioness Fenwick had sent. Judging by their last meeting, that woman knew every single rumor inside out. She'd definitely have dirt on Lilia's situation. With a plan forming, she rushed to find Cadell, telling him that Ladius wanted to invite him for another playdate. She added that it was an exclusive invite, just for them, so they could play without interruptions. Cadell asked if it was really Latias who wanted to hang out. Lilia confirmed it was. Hearing that, Cadell immediately suggested inviting them over to their place instead. Then, buzzing with excitement, he admitted he'd always dreamed of inviting a friend to his home. Lilia's heart melted hearing the word friend. It meant he had officially dodged the tragic destiny written in the original story. She promised to pen the invitation right away. The big day arrived quickly, and Cadell was practically vibrating with anticipation. Lilia felt a wave of relief that her son finally made a buddy. Just then, a maid announced that Marchioness Fenwick had arrived. She watched them walk in. Marchioness Fenwick graciously thanked Lilia for the invitation and expressed her delight. Latias also greeted them like a perfect little gentleman. Lilia smiled, mentioning that Cadell had been counting down the minutes. Latias looked confused, asking if she meant Cadell. Cadell jumped in quickly. "Latias, it's so good to see you." Lilia watched them, puzzled, wondering if they were actually close. Cadell suggested taking Latias on a mansion tour. Lilia was thrilled to see a blossoming friendship, so she agreed. Marchioness Fenwick also reminded Latias to get along well with his new friend. The two boys ran off to play, leaving Lilia and Marchioness Fenwick to start their pleasant afternoon tea. Lilia brought out her finest tea blend for the occasion. The Marchioness showed great interest, noting it reminded her of a dear friend. Sadly, that friend was ill last time, so they hadn't met. Lilia suggested packing some tea for her to take home. That's when the Marchioness mentioned the woman had pink hair and absolutely adored her daughter. Alarm bells rang in Lilia's head. The novel's main character also had pink hair, and a mother suffering from a chronic illness. She tentatively asked Marchioness Fenwick if her friend's daughter was 7 years old with pink hair. When the answer came back affirmative, it hit her. That girl was the novel's protagonist, the very person Cadell was destined to imprison. Marchioness Fenwick blinked, asking how Lilia knew those specific details. Lilia froze, mind racing for an excuse. She quickly lied, claiming she had been researching children around Cadell's age. Surprisingly, the Marchioness bought it, noting that Cadell and her friend's daughter were only a year apart. But Lilia already knew the timeline perfectly. In the original storyline, the female lead's mother dies when the girl turns 8. That meant there was only 1 year left until the tragic destiny kicked into high gear. After that tragedy, her dad started drowning his grief in a bottle, and some vultures smelled blood in the water. They exploited him, burying the family in massive debt until he took his own life. Left with nothing, the protagonist had to scrub floors at the duchy to pay the bills. That's when Cadell got fixated on her. He literally locked her up. Lilia isn't about to let that horror show happen. The only way to flip the script is to cure the protagonist's mom. If they catch that illness early, she survives. In the original novel, they gave up because the meds cost a fortune, but Lilia's got a workaround. First step, she needs access to the mom, so she hit up Marchioness Fenwick, asking for a face-to-face meeting. The Marchioness was totally down for it, but Lilia kept her eyes on the prize, the real mission. Fenwick picked up on the vibe immediately. "You've got something on your mind, honey. Spill it." "I'm all ears." Lilia played the social hermit card, claiming she doesn't get out much, and fished for any rumors floating around about her. Fenwick lit up instantly and started dropping the lore on the legendary romance between Lilia and Kieran. "Girl, don't you know? Your love story is viral. Apparently, Kieran was down bad for you since childhood. He proposed just to wipe out your debt because you said you wanted a quiet life. Even the wedding was this super private, intimate vibe." The Marchioness was practically fangirling, talking about how hyped she was to see Lilia at the birthday bash. Lilia was internally screaming. This fanfiction-level romance didn't match the reality at all, especially considering how cold Kieran and Cadell actually acted. Fenwick confirmed that was the only tea being spilled, telling her to chill out. Realizing the intel gathering was a dead end, Lilia figured she'd just have to rely on those random memory flashes unlocking over time. They switched lanes to mom talk. Lilia happily shared the receipts from her observation diary on Cadell. Suddenly, a knock interrupted the vibe. Servants burst in, looking terrified. Cadell and Latias are throwing hands. Both moms went into panic mode. "Don't sugarcoat it." The servants admitted the boys were trashing the place. Lilia didn't hesitate. She sprinted to the scene. When she arrived, it was a disaster zone, scorch marks everywhere, and chaotic footprints stamped into the dirt. She shouted Cadell's name, going full mom mode. Cadell spun around, covered in soot and looking guilty. He hit her with the sad puppy eyes, but Lilia steeled herself. Consequences first, sympathy later. She used her stern voice. "This is a training ground. You could have hurt the guards who protect us." Cadell dropped his head, defeated. "Mom, my bad. I just wanted to flex the training grounds to Latias." Flashback to a few minutes ago. Cadell brought Latias here, bragging about how hard the knights train daily. Latias was unimpressed, basically saying, "Mid, my knights are way better." That bruised Cadell's ego. Then Latias poked the bear. "You're a fire user. right? Cadell puffed up proudly. Then Ladius asked if he could chase away a storm. That triggered Cadell instantly. Ignoring the servants trying to de-escalate, he started charging up his magic. Ladius mocked him from the sidelines. That flame looks like it's about to die out. Cadell snapped. He boosted the firepower and blasted the field. The training ground was instantly engulfed in an inferno, trees catching fire. The servants were losing their minds. Cadell smirked at Ladius, looking satisfied, until Ladius started slow clapping, saying, "Cute, but not on my level." Then Ladius split a distant tree in half with magic. Cadell wasn't about to lose, claiming he could torch the whole forest. Ladius said, "Bet," and they decided to battle it out, for family honor. The servants tried to stop the madness, but Cadell had already stopped listening to reason. Terrified of the fallout, the staff ran to snitch. End of flashback. Cadell whispered, "I just couldn't let him disrespect the family name." Lilia understood the pride thing, but safety comes first. She ordered him to go get changed so he wouldn't catch a cold. Meanwhile, Fenwick was roasting Ladius. Lilia suggested Ladius get changed too, but Fenwick realized she didn't pack a backup outfit. "He can borrow Cadell's drip," Lilia offered. Fenwick apologized profusely, but knowing she couldn't let the kid freeze, she happily accepted the offer. Moments later, the boys walked down, holding hands, rocking fresh clothes. Lilia beamed at the reconciliation, while Ladius dropped a polite apology. "Duchess, I am so incredibly sorry." And Cadell? Big apology, straight from the heart. Lilia, seeing him act so polite and thoughtful, pivoted to her son. "Cadell, I think you owe someone an apology too, right?" Cadell bowed his little head, playing the part of the obedient angel. But then he flipped the switch. "Ladius, you're a total jerk." His sudden outburst freaked Lilia out. She was still trying to process the whiplash. But then she realized the kids were already vibing again like nothing happened. While Lilia was confused, the Marchioness Fenwick just shrugged it off. Totally normal behavior for boys. The next morning, at the crack of dawn, Cadell marched in clutching a book, looking for his mom. He wanted a story. The title? The Winter Witch. Lilia was happy to oblige and cracked open the cover. In a land buried under ice and snow, there was a rumor about a witch. She possessed insane magical power and could grant literally any wish. But to spice up her boring eternal life, the witch started demanding human souls as payment. Desperate people were willing to risk it all, for the ones they loved. The plot hooked Lilia immediately. It felt weirdly familiar. But before she could spiral, Cadell cut in. "Mom, then what? What happened to them?" Seeing he was invested, she kept reading. Later on, no matter how good the odds looked, the witch never lost. The whole thing was just a rigged game to harvest souls. The intense emotions within those souls were what supercharged her magic. Cadell's eyes went wide. "Mom, so that means the bigger the feelings, the stronger the magic? Then I must be way stronger than Ladius. Because I love you so much, Mom." Lilia melted and pulled him into a hug, telling him she loved him to the moon and back. Then Cadell asked, "I know Mom loves me, but what about Dad? Does Mom love Dad?" The question hit Lilia like a truck. She froze, then admitted honestly, "Yeah, even if I'm scared to say it. Mom loves Dad too." Lilia knew Kieran was in love with the original body owner, not her soul, but she'd fallen for him anyway. Cadell didn't get the subtext and asked why she was scared to love Dad. Lilia had to explain that she used to be pretty harsh with him. "If you ask Dad if he loves Mom, I think he'll say yes." Kieran appeared out of nowhere, asking if they were reading fairy tales. Lilia nearly jumped out of her skin at his sudden entrance. Remembering what she just confessed, panic set in. Did he hear her? Kieran said he needed to have a chat with Cadell about yesterday's drama. Lilia let out a breath she was holding he didn't hear. She quickly said Cadell already admitted his mistake, so please don't scold him. Kieran said he knew, but he still had to do some parenting. Lilia hugged her son, turning on the charm, trying to get leniency for Cadell. Seeing Kieran wasn't budging, she put Cadell down and whispered, "If Dad is too mean, you come straight to Mom, okay?" But Cadell didn't seem worried at all. He bounced over and grabbed his dad's hand. Kieran didn't expect his son to initiate contact like that. He scooped Cadell up into his arms. Before walking out, he suddenly turned to Lilia and dropped a bomb. "I'll give you that answer you want before we sleep. See you tonight." Lilia stood there, completely paralyzed. He heard everything. After spending the day reading about the witch, that night, the witch haunted Lilia's dreams. The witch whispered, "Time flies so fast. You remember our promise is due soon, right?" She woke up gasping, terrified, unsure if that chat with the witch was just a nightmare or something real. Kieran noticed her sudden jolt and knew the terrors were back. Lilia caught the word, another. Did she used to have nightmares all the time? Kieran wanted to explain, but hesitated. Instead, he soaked a towel and placed it on her forehead, telling her to just rest for now. Lilia grabbed his hand, desperate. "But I need to know. Will you tell me? Do these nightmares have something to do with my memory loss?" Kieran had to spill some tea about their childhood. They first met when they were just kids. Lilia greeted him with perfect manners. And then, a split second later, she tripped over her own feet because she was so nervous. Kieran couldn't help but laugh, earning him a death glare. From tiny Lilia, he didn't think he'd see her again, but she started showing up constantly. Even though she was invading his personal space, he couldn't help but fall for this beautiful, clumsy girl. Kieran said that was all he could share for now. Lilia, annoyed, asked why he was gatekeeping the rest. Kieran continued, "A few years ago, I made you a promise that we'd go back to how we were as kids. But I broke my word. I could only keep that promise. Once you lost your memory, that's why I don't want you to remember." Lilia opened her mouth to press him, but he cut her off. "You need to sleep. Don't be scared. I'm right here. No more nightmares." However, after that night, a wall went up between them. The maid was crying, asking if she and the Duke had a fight. Why were they suddenly sleeping in separate rooms? Lilia got even more irritated hearing that. Why is everyone grilling her? Go ask the Duke. Why the sudden cold shoulder and separate bedrooms? Ever since that night, Kieran started crashing in the guest room, claiming he was working late. Yeah, right. Even his assistant couldn't track him down. The guy was ghosting her in their own house. Suddenly, little Cadell bursts in screaming, "Mom!" He wanted to know if minus time, she and Dad were beefing because he messed up. Lilia was stunned. The kid actually thought this was his fault? She immediately pulled him close. "No, baby. Mommy and Daddy are just working through some stuff. I need to ask him something, and he's not ready to talk." Cadell looked confused. Why make a huge scene over something so tiny? She squeezed him tight, swearing they weren't fighting, just taking space to think. But the separate bedrooms told a different story. Smirking, she teased, "Wait a minute. Weren't you the one who hated us being together in the first place?" Cadell ignored the jab, putting his hands up like a little businessman. "Mom, be real. You don't hate Dad, do you? You want to make up with him, right?" Thrown off by the sudden interrogation, she nodded. "Yes, of course." Boom. Cadell jumps up, snaps his fingers at the door, and yells, "I'm done here. You guys take over." Before Lilia could process the setup, two burly guards storm in, looking totally apologetic. "Young master's orders, ma'am. Forgive us." Next thing she knows, they're hoisting her up into the air, one on each side. Cadell watches with a grin. "Mom, you said we gotta be nice to friends, right? So why are you fighting with Dad?" Lilia realized she'd been played. The kid skips over and throws the door open, signaling the go-ahead. The guards march forward, carrying her out like a piece of luggage, completely ignoring Lilia's protests. They don't stop until they reach Kieran's office. Sure, she wanted to talk, but getting kidnapped wasn't part of the plan. Inside, Kieran looks just as shocked. His son had told him he had questions about superpowers and to wait there. He definitely didn't expect a special delivery of his wife via bodyguards. He clocks Cadell's scheme instantly. Sheepish, he apologizes to Lilia and finally comes clean. "Yeah, I've been dodging you." "I knew it," she snaps. "Why?" He lowers his voice, looking guilty. "I didn't want you to get your memories back. When I brought up our childhood, I just couldn't stand seeing you suffer through those nightmares. It slipped out. I regretted it the second I said it. I was terrified you'd remember everything, so I ran away to buy time." Lilia's heart melts a little, but she still scolds him. "You should have just told me." But Kieran, he was terrified their happiness was just a temporary illusion. Lilia squeezes his hand tight. "Stop being afraid. Even if I remember everything, it won't change how I feel right now. I'm telling you this with everything I have. I love you." That's permanent. Kieran feels like a total jerk for doubting her. She assures him she's not mad, and promises to stop digging into the past. Drama resolved. Flash forward 1 month later. It's finally time to meet the novel's main character. Before heading out, Lilia tells the maid to keep a close eye on Cadell, since she might pull an all-nighter. Marchioness Fenwick is already waiting at the door, bright and early. She's hyped for a mom squad meeting and sweetly tells Lilia to drop the formal titles. "Just call me Venetia." Lilia Beam's first-name basis means they're officially close. They roll up to Lady Fennell's estate, and she's already waiting in the parlor. Acting like royalty just walked in, she immediately brings up the tea Lilia sent over. "Venetia said this brew is a painkiller? I've been chugging bitter medicine for years, so swapping it for tea is a lifesaver. But, why are you guys actually here?" Lilia drops her rehearsed line. "I heard your daughter is the same age as my son, and you adore her. Figured us moms should stick together." Lady Fennell buys it completely. Suddenly, a little girl zooms into the room. Lilia spots her instantly. It's Mia, the main character. The kid stares at the guests, curious as a cat, and locks eyes with Lilia. Mia gasps, totally unfiltered. "Wow, that lady is gorgeous." Then she realizes she's being rude and quickly mumbles an apology. Lilia is instantly charmed. How could Cadell ever lock up this angel? Lilia introduces herself warmly, and Mia curtsies back. Lady Fennell tries to send her off to bed, but Mia whines, "But Mom, I didn't get my bedtime story yet." Suddenly, Lady Fennell starts hacking a violent, ugly cough. Then she just collapses backward. Total chaos. Marchioness Fenwick screams for a doctor. Looks like Lady Fennell's condition is way worse than they thought. It was a total nightmare scenario, way worse than anyone anticipated. Thank God the doctor rushed in when he did. Nia was a wreck, sobbing, terrified because she'd never seen her mom coughing up crimson like that before. Lilia went into full crisis management mode, keeping her voice soft, telling the kid to breathe, that mom just needed some solid rest. But internally, Lilia was freaking out, desperate to secure a cure yesterday. The problem was the timing. Getting a private audience with Lady Fennell right now was impossible. She'd have to get her intel through Nia first. Nia clung to her, begging to hang out with Lilia a little longer. Perfect timing, actually, since Venetia needed to check on her sick friend anyway. Nia promised to stay quiet as a mouse with Lilia while the maids took over nursing duty. Soon, the room cleared out, leaving just the two of them. In the parlor, Lilia gently wiped away the girl's tears and dropped a question. Do you believe in fairies? Nia's face lit up instantly. The legendary ones? The ones that bring good luck? She was hooked. Lilia leaned in, spinning a classic winter tale. Picture a little girl, lost in a frozen forest, starving. She hadn't eaten a single bite all day. Then, miracle of miracles, she finds bread under a tree. But suddenly, this old woman appears, asking to share. The girl doesn't hesitate. She splits the bread right down the middle. The old woman smiles and drops a blessing. You've got a good heart, kid. The fairy is sending you a special gift. And just like that, the old woman morphs into a stunning young fairy. The girl gets the fairy's blessing, and boom, she's reunited with her family. Lilia calculated quickly. If I frame it like a story, Nia will buy it without questions. And she was right. The kid was a true believer. Lilia leaned closer, whispering, So, do you think I might be a luck-bringing fairy? Nia practically vibrated with excitement. Totally! You have that silver fairy hair and you're pretty enough to be one. I believe you. Once. Nia Pinky promised to keep their chat top secret. Lilia made her move. Okay, I'm going to give you a luck blessing right now. If you follow my instructions exactly, your mom is going to be okay. Nia looked at her like she was a superhero. Lilia handed over the package. Nia stared at the flowers in her hand, confused. They look dead. Lilia shook her head. Not dead. Just sleeping. They haven't fully bloomed yet. You need to mix these into your mom's bathwater. Nia blinked her huge, innocent eyes, asking if that was really how magic luck worked. Trust me. But here's the catch. You have to do it under the moonlight. Can you handle that mission? Nia nodded furiously, determined to ace this test. She launched herself into Lilia's arms, thanking her profusely. Lilia watched her, thinking how adorable she was. And since Cadell was already shaping up nicely, maybe she could orchestrate a meet-cute for the kids sooner rather than later. Get that relationship off to a solid start. She told Nia to come over for a playdate soon. Later that night, Lady Fennell sat in bed, drowning in gloom. She used to live for those afternoon tea parties with the other ladies. Now, her health was tanking. She honestly didn't know how much time she had left on the clock. Her dark thoughts were interrupted by a knock, and suddenly her daughter came barreling in, demanding to know why she was still awake. Nia announced she was on a mission to fulfill a promise to a fairy. Lady Fennell was completely lost. But before she could ask questions, she was being dragged out of the room. Nia had already prepped a bath in the guest bathroom. They arrived, and Nia insisted Mom bathe here tonight, explaining that the moon didn't hit the master bath, and the fairy was very specific about the moonlight touching the water. Lady Fennell's head was spinning with all this fairy talk, but seeing her daughter so hyped up and trying so hard, she decided to just roll with the game. She stepped into the tub and hugged Nia close. Suddenly, the impossible happened. Those dried-up stems burst into full bloom, one by one. Lady Fennell gasped. Nia grabbed a floating flower and squealed. The fairy wasn't lying. Lady Fennell was starting to get very curious about this mysterious fairy. It's just like the stories you read me, Mom. The fairy said if I did exactly what she said, you'd get better. She's bringing us luck. Lady Fennell had no clue who was feeding Nia these lines, but she couldn't deny reality. Her body felt lighter. The splitting headache? Gone. No medicine had ever hit like this. She hadn't seen a doctor or changed her prescription recently, so why the sudden turnaround? Looking at her daughter's shining face, she almost started believing in magic herself. Nia, are you sure a fairy gave you this? Yes. She said if you take this bath every night for 100 days, good luck will stick with us forever. Lady Fennell realized that good luck forever was probably code for a total cure. Suddenly, Nia shouted, Look! The flowers look like dancing fairies! Lady Fennell smiled, noting they also looked like strands of silver hair. And then it clicked. Silver hair. Like a fairy. Wasn't that the Duchess's signature look? Did she know how to treat this illness? It wasn't unheard of for the Duchess to help out lower nobility. She didn't have all the answers, but seeing Nia this happy was a miracle in itself. Lilia's mind replayed the afternoon conversation. Lady Fennell had opened up, convinced they were on the same wavelength regarding family. That was the hook. Final sensed Lilia truly grasped the depth of her love for her daughter, Mia. The kid seemed like a total troublemaker, but underneath the chaos, pure heart of gold. Fennell was just desperate for enough time to watch her little girl grow up. Before, she was just silently counting down the clock, waiting for the end. But now, dying wasn't an option. She adored her kid too much. How could she ever walk away? Mia caught her mom crying and went straight into comfort mode. Lady Fennell crushed her daughter in a hug, vowing that from here on out, she wasn't going anywhere. Cut to later that night. Lilia got back home and spotted Cadell and Kieran still grinding away in the office. She went into stealth mode, eavesdropping from the hallway. Cadell was dead serious, arguing that a dress matching Mom's eyes was the superior choice. Kieran wasn't buying it, though. Lilia has this legendary mermaid vibe, he countered. So, trust me, blue is the only color that works. Lilia turned beet red instantly. She tried to act like she hadn't heard a thing, pivoting to sneak back to her room. She almost made a clean getaway until gotcha. Tiny hands locked onto her. Mom, when did you get back? Busted. Caught red-handed, Lilia had to face the music, asking awkwardly, so what were you guys chatting about? Their answer was terrifyingly synchronized. We're talking about you. Talk about embarrassing. Could they be any more blunt? She frantically changed the subject. Kieran, work finished? And Cadell, homework done? Again, the creepy unison response. Yep, all done, right on cue. A servant showed up. To remind Cadell, it was class time. The kid threw a fit, wanting to hang out with his mom a little longer. It took some serious sweet-talking from Lilia to get him to budge. He dragged his feet to class, leaving her alone in the meeting room with Kieran. The second Cadell left, Kieran zoned out, lost in his own head. Lilia's intuition flared. Something was off. She closed the distance, asking if something was eating at him. He shook his head no, but she called his bluff immediately. He sighed. If I spill my guts, will you comfort me? Lilia smiled. You know it. Deep down, she knew exactly what was haunting him. He was terrified of the moment she'd finally regain her memories. She pressed him, demanding to know who ruined his mood, making it clear she wasn't playing around. Kieran snatched her hand, whispering that she was way too adorable. Then he let go, dropping a warning. If you keep seducing me like this, making me dependent on you, I'm never going to let you escape. Lilia gently cupped his cheek. I'm into you, Kieran. That's why I want zero distance between us. After dropping that truth bomb, she turned to leave, telling him not to stress himself out, leaving him standing there, stunned in the silence. The next day, Kieran's brain replayed the chat he'd had with Cadell. The kid had heard a rumor, mom plus dad sharing a bed equals a baby brother, but it had been forever, and still no baby. He demanded to know when dad was going to pay up on that promise. Cadell vowed to work hard to keep the family vibes strong, but he laid down the law for his dad. I want to keep seeing mom smile. That line hit Kieran hard. It was a wake-up call. Family was the endgame. He made a solemn vow to his son that he'd make it happen. Mid-bite of toast, Cadell had asked when the next family vacay was happening. He was already planning the color of mom's dress. Kieran never expected Lilia to materialize. Right at that moment, thank God she only caught the tail end of the conversation. Back in the present, his assistant caught him grinning and asked what was so funny. Kieran shut him down cold. Stop with the useless questions. We need to wrap this up fast so Lilia doesn't get suspicious. The assistant looked baffled. Wait, about Count Owen's letter. Are we seriously trashing it without telling the Duchess? Kieran's face went stone cold. Burn it, before she sees a single word. The staff didn't get it. Lilia wasn't part of the Count's family before marriage. From the butler's point of view, Lilia was always an ice queen to the manor staff, yet she welcomed the Count warmly. It made no sense why the Duke, who was trying to score points with his wife, was secretly intercepting her mail. But Kieran didn't care about the optics. He knew the real story. The relationship between Lilia and the Count was a total sham. To the Count, Lilia was just a pawn, a glorified ATM. Every visit was just a shakedown for more money. He was the last person Lilia saw before her memory wiped. Back then, Kieran was powerless. Not anymore. He'd pay any price to protect her. The next morning, the moment she woke up, Lilia got the news. Kieran was off to see the Emperor, but he'd slipped out. Before she even opened her eyes, she felt a pang of regret she'd missed her chance to say goodbye. Lilia nearly jumped out of her skin when a shadow suddenly loomed over her. Hand over her racing heart, she shot a glare at the intruder. Do you have to sneak up on me like a ninja every time? A little warning next time, maybe? But Kieran just leaned in, voice smooth as velvet. You were out cold, sleeping like an angel. How could I have the heart to wake you up? Lilia knew he was swamped with work, so she played the supportive wife card. Go, handle your business. I'll be waiting right here. Stay safe. But the second the door clicked shut behind Kieran, The silence hit hard. Lilia flopped back onto the massive king-sized mattress, looking tiny in all that space. Her maid caught the vibe instantly. Feeling lonely already, my lady? Lilia didn't even try to hide it. He's been gone 5 seconds. And yeah, it sucks. The emptiness was creeping in fast. Then, snap, she remembered Lady Fennell. Right on cue, the maid whipped out a fancy pastry box. Compliments of the lady herself. It was a tart from Fennell. Lilia scanned the attached note, and her shoulders finally dropped. Thank goodness. Fennell wasn't just surviving, she was actually thriving. The end of the letter was basically a gratitude bomb dropped specifically on Lady Lilia. Lilia's cheeks turned a shade of crimson. She honestly didn't expect Nia to spill the entire tea to her mom. But hey, butterfly effect engaged. Because of that truth bomb, Nia's future was rewritten. No more tragic backstory for that kid. She nestled back into the pillows, brain spinning. She needed a cover story for that miracle cure, and fast. I read it in a fantasy novel, wasn't exactly going to fly in the real world. She lay there, ruminating until consciousness faded, and she drifted into the void. When her eyes snapped open, she was engulfed in pitch-black darkness. The only sound was a heartbreaking sob echoing endlessly. Confused, Lilia stumbled forward and froze. A little girl was curled up on the ground, crying her eyes out. Plot twist. It was Mini Lilia, the original host. Lilia crouched down, voice soft. Hey, sweetie, why the waterworks? What's wrong? Little Lilia looked up, eyes hollow. Trust me, you don't want to know. If you see the truth, you'll never be able to unsee it. You can't live your happy little life if you know. But Lilia wasn't about to live a lie. Ignorance isn't bliss when it puts a wall between her and her husband. To truly fix things with Kieran, she needed the full receipts. Help me, she pleaded. I need to unlock the memories. Little Lilia's face crumbled into pure despair. Why are you obsessed with the truth? Why can't you just take the win? You have a chance to be happy. Why wreck it? The girl's voice trembled. If you dig up the past, you're just going to hurt everyone you love all over again. Lilia's gaze hardened into steel. No, I won't. I don't care what happened back then. I know exactly who matters to me right now. That conviction finally broke through the kid's defenses. Little Lilia stopped fighting it. Fine. Hiding it won't fix anything anyway. The girl faded, voice echoing. You want in? I'll show you. But it starts with him. A total scumbag entered my life. Our father, Count Owen. Lilia jolted awake in a cold sweat, the dream's final words burning in her mind. The father is the key to the memory. That was the clue. She was still processing the nightmare when Mom, Cadell, burst in, radiating golden retriever energy. Are you busy? I mastered some sick new sword moves. You gotta see this. Lilia smiled. Show me. He zoomed outside, hyped, but as Lilia stood up to follow, her maid stepped in front of the door, blocking her path. My lady, maybe stay inside? The maid was trying way too hard to keep her grounded. Lilia narrowed her eyes. Did something happen? Or are you hiding something from me? Silence. That was an answer in itself. She pushed past. Outside was absolute chaos. Suddenly, Cadell grabbed her hand, tugging her toward the garden. Mom, let's go this way. Nope. Red flags everywhere. Kieran was gone, and the vibe was completely off. She needed to assess the situation. She looked down at Cadell. Hold on, kiddo. I need to see what the commotion is before we do the sword demo. But Cadell started stammering, inventing excuses, to herd her back to the bedroom. By the main gate, the servants looked like they were about to have a collective panic attack when they saw her coming. They swarmed in, forming a human wall to stop her. Oh, I get it. This coordinated blockade? Definitely a Kieran-sanctioned lockdown. Someone was here, someone she wasn't supposed to see. Then, the crowd parted. A man stepped out, a smirk plastered on his face. Long time no see, Lilia. Kieran's guards were holding the line. Strict no-entry policy. The guy rolled his eyes at Lilia. Your hubby's watchdogs won't let me in. Rude much? Lilia's mental gears clicked. This snake waited for Kieran to leave before showing up. But this was also a golden opportunity to get the truth. This guy had no filter. He'd spill everything. Let him through, she commanded. The guards hesitated but stepped aside. The Count strutted in with zero shame. Finally, what's with the hostile welcome, daughter? Lilia ignored his chatter, icing him out. She turned to the maid. Escort him to the meeting room. Just looking at the man made her skin crawl. A physical wave of repulsion hit her. She couldn't help but wonder, what kind of monster is he to make my body react like this? Beside her, Cadell tugged her sleeve. He looked terrified. Mom, don't make that face. You used to look like that all the time. It scares me. Lilia's heart broke. She dropped to her knees immediately. I'm so sorry, Cadell. Mom promises, no more scary faces. Okay? Whenever I look at you, I only want to smile. You're too cute to be scary around. Don't worry, the old me is gone. She stood up, business mode engaged. I have to deal with this guest. Go wait in your room. But Cadell planted his feet. No way. Father isn't here, so I'm protecting you. His eyes flashed with a dark intensity. If that guy tries to hurt you, I'll burn him, down to ashes. Lilia felt a surge of warmth and a little concern at his ferocity. She nodded. Okay, little knight. They entered the meeting room. She settled Cadell on the sofa. The Count didn't waste a second to throw shade. Aw, look at you two, all cozy. Funny, considering you used to look at that brat with pure ice. I guess misery loves company. You really want to raise that kid? He's got barbarian blood, you know. The audacity. Insulting a child to his face? Lilia snapped. She didn't just interrupt him. She shut him down with a fury that could level the building. While Cadell stood off to the side, silently twisting flames around his fingers, the Count sneered. Clearly, you skipped the chapter on parenting. The brat is trying to incinerate his own grandfather. Cadell stepped right into the Count's face. Zero fear. You touch Mom, I'll burn you. Lilia instantly snapped at Cadell to kill the fire. But the Count just poured gas on the tension. Don't you want to know why you're just as wretched as the woman who gave birth to you? He smirked. Send the kid away. We have business to discuss. Cadell didn't budge an inch. No way was he leaving his mom alone with this snake. Lilia knew exactly how toxic the Count was. If Cadell stayed, the secrets would start spilling, and seeing her son get hurt was the last thing she needed. She turned to him, pleading with her eyes to give them a minute alone. Cadell was seething, every instinct screaming no, but hearing his mom beg him, he finally backed down, warning her to scream if she needed him. The door barely clicked shut before the Count's nasty laugh filled the room. Got them on a tight leash, don't you? Akira and the brat are totally wrapped around your finger. Now that the third wheel is gone, let's cut the chase. I need funding for a new venture. Lilia felt that familiar migraine piercing her skull. It was the same old script, played out 1,000 times. The memories flooded back like a nightmare. That time the Duke returned from his expedition, dripping in gold and glory. Trading you to him is the only way to clear my debts. Even though the original Lilia fought tooth and nail, the Count didn't care. He literally dragged her into it. From what I hear, your little investments are total money pits. And deep down, you know I'm right, don't you? The Count froze. He definitely wasn't expecting her to clap back like that. That triggered him. You're nothing but the spawn of a miserable maid. You should be on your knees thanking me for letting you play dress up as a noble. Whoa! The original Lilia's backstory was way darker than she ever imagined. Suddenly, it clicked her mom had that same fiery hair color. They were living their best life until everything crashed and burned in an instant. The Count's goons kicked the door down and snatched little Lilia. Mom was screaming, crying, begging, but it didn't change a thing. Dragged to the Count's estate? She was stripped of everything, even her real name. Her only crime? Being drop-dead gorgeous. That face forced her into the role of an often illegitimate daughter, and just like that, she became the Lilia everyone whispered about. One silver lining? Her mom actually snagged a gig at the mansion. Working as a nanny, they'd steal precious moments to play whenever the coast was clear, but they had to move like ghosts. One slip-up could ruin everything. Mom was constantly on edge, terrified the Countess would expose their secret. Little Lilia figured, the Countess hates my guts anyway, so why would she even bother watching me? Mom gently kissed her hand, reassuring her. How could she not adore you? You're precious. But Lilia wasn't naive. She knew the vibes in the Count's mansion were toxic. Only Mom was delusional enough to believe that. The very next day, the Countess summoned her. Instant dread kicked in. Lilia frantically scanned her memory. Had she screwed up a lesson? This was totally out of character. The Countess never called for her. Don't look so terrified, the woman said, her voice uncomfortably smooth. I realized I've been an ice queen, and I want to step up as a mother. Is anything bothering you? Lilia stood there, totally lost. What was the angle here? The Countess stroked Lilia's cheek, but the vibe was menacing. I've noticed you getting real cozy with the nanny lately. Why do you prefer the help over me, your own mom? That question hit like a horror movie jump scare. Lilia was absolutely petrified. Her only true escape was playing with her birth mom, but she bit her tongue and stayed quiet. The Countess kept pushing. If you hate going out with me, then get out of my face. Little Lilia couldn't wrap her head around it. Why was the Countess losing her mind like that? But the vibe was definitely off. Fast forward to late that night. Mom sneaks into Lilia's room, gazing down at her sleeping daughter, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I promised I'd protect you forever. She presses a pendant into Lilia's tiny hand. Looks like I can't keep that promise. Next morning, Lilia wakes up, spots the necklace, and her stomach drops. Instinct kicks in. She starts screaming for her nanny. But surprise, surprise, it's a stranger standing there. Choking back tears, she begs to know where her real nanny went. The new hire? Stone cold. Eat your breakfast. The madam won't like seeing you a mess. That was the red flag. Lilia knew instantly the Countess pulled some twisted strings. She wipes her eyes, desperate to beg for mercy. She rushes to the drawing room and drops to her knees in front of the Countess. It's all on me. Just please, bring her back. The Countess smirks. Did I take something of yours? You really miss Mommy that much? Heard the Northern Duke needed help, so I shipped her off. Don't look so tragic. I'm heading there this summer. Wanna tag along? Then the Count chimes in from the sidelines. Then take this chance to head over to the Duke's mansion. His son is still just a little kid. Make sure you catch his eye. Use that pretty face of yours to seduce him. It is time to pay me back for raising you. The flashback snaps shut, but the Count is still right there, running his mouth. That is, unless you want your husband finding out exactly what kind of gutter you crawled out of. Lilia fires back instantly, insisting Akira wouldn't give a damn about her history. How does it sit with you knowing he's the spawn of the man who slaughtered your mom? The Count kept twisting the knife, leveraging Lilia's mother's grave as a hostage. You better fall in line. One wrong move, and I'll desecrate her tomb. I think she's gonna be crushed. Lilia never expected the guy to be absolute trash. She realized that back in the day, he probably used these same toxic threats on the original host, driving her to that tragic end. But Lilia? She wasn't about to be bullied by some cheap talk. She straight up ordered him to leave. Zero hesitation. Security rushed in, dragging the Count out while he was still screaming curses like a maniac. Cadell burst into the room, looking totally panicked, checking if his mom was okay. When bedtime rolled around, the kid showed up clutching his emotional support teddy bear. To cheer her up, Lilia's heart melted seeing him try to comfort her, so she immediately agreed to a sleepover. Watching Cadell look so obedient, she couldn't help but wonder how much damage her Ice Queen era had caused him. Cadell, be honest. Do you hate Mommy? He lowered his head, silence filling the room. You never hugged me before. But Mom, even when you were freezing cold, I still liked you. I just kept wishing you'd give me one smile. And then, you finally did. I was mad at first, but not anymore, because I really, really love you. Lilia pulled her precious munchkin into a tight squeeze. The truth was, during that shouting match with the Count, it all came flooding back. She even saw the Winter Witch in her mind. In that memory, she was clutching the only keepsake left of her mother. She had begged the witch to let her go back to the past to see her mom. She didn't expect the witch to say no, but the witch offered a 10-year deal instead. Back then, she felt that a life without her mother was pointless, even if she had all the time in the world. But the witch just laughed, accusing Lilia of bluffing, and proposed a high-stakes bet. If you're so sure, then you won't lose. I'll give you a reboot. A new life, completely free. A life where you can actually be loved. No more sadness, no more pain. Deal? Lilia looked down at the child in her arms. She remembered how every single day used to be pure agony. So unbearable, she just wanted to reset everything and run back to her mom. But that wasn't an option anymore. If she did that, Cadell's future would be a horror show. She used to think the torn wings in the novel referred to the female lead, trapped in the Duke's mansion. But that was a lie. The one who truly had their wings ripped off was Cadell, and the villain behind it all was her. At that exact moment, the realization hit her like a truck. Lilia hadn't reincarnated into some stranger's body. She was the original owner all along. She remembered everything now. It was time to end this game with the witch. Lilia knew things wouldn't be the same, because now she had a husband and son who were actually waiting for her, loving her. She was going to show them exactly how much they meant to her. Meanwhile, Kieran had just wrapped up his battlefield arc and his only goal was speedrunning his way home. He was terrified the Count had hurt Lilia, but his savvy knights told him to chill. Boss, if you show up from the war without a souvenir, the madam is going to be majorly disappointed. That's when he remembered he needed a gift. He frantically hit up a nearby market. A bit later, he walked back under the gaze of his squad. He'd bought a bag full of jewels, but honestly, none of it felt right for Lilia. The knights were sweating, worried he was going to go home empty-handed. Just then, he spotted a flower stand on the roadside. He bought every single purple hydrangea they had. Then he led the troops back, not stopping for a second. Inside, he was still a nervous wreck, terrified that Lilia had regained her memories and would revert to her cold factory settings. But reality was way better. They were both camping at the entrance waiting for him. Lilia, seeing him return, immediately walked up and told him how much she missed him. Cadell launched himself to welcome his dad home. Did you hold down the fort and protect Mom, Cadell? For a second, the kid froze, not knowing what to say. Lilia jumped in with the save. Of course, he was my little knight in shining armor. Right. Kieran, what's that in your hands? He shyly signaled it was a present for her. Once they were inside, the maid arranged the blooms in a vase. Lilia stared at the flowers, suddenly getting all melancholic. She asked the maid, hypothetically, if you're stuck in a messed up relationship that isn't anyone's fault, what would you do? Depends on the vibe. If it's a glitch I can fix, I'd grind to fix it. If it's unfixable, I'd cut it off. Lilia nodded, thinking that made total sense, but she still wanted to try and fix it. The maid, sharp as a tack, clocked the situation and asked if her memories were back. Lilia didn't even try to hide it. She admitted that the Count's visit unlocked everything. The maid went full rage mode, That trash count. He came all this way just to torture the madam, and that's what triggered it? I need to get the holy water. Stat. We need to exorcise the bad vibes that evil old man left behind. Lilia was shook. The maid wasn't worried about the memory loss. She was just furious at Lilia's dad. The maid was absolutely seething. And honestly, same. I can't even imagine the toxic trash that guy spewed. Just to force your memories back to the surface. That had to be a total gut punch. I was low-key terrified that unlocking your past would turn you back into that cold version of yourself. But back then, your eyes were empty, totally dead inside. Now, they're glowing with pure warmth and love. You kept your promise, memories came back, but you didn't switch up. After dropping that truth bomb, she stormed off to rage clean the entire mansion. Lilia just watched her go, feeling totally helpless. Staring at the flowers, her mind drifted straight to Kieran. Later that night, after tucking little Cadell in, she headed back to the master bedroom, ready to wait up for her man. But surprise, he was already sitting right there on the bed. Just got back from the battlefield, he sighed. I might be a beast out there, but even I can't grind 24/7. You're on my mind every single day. All I wanted was to see you. Lilia instantly blushed, telling him to cut out the cheesy romance talk before she died of embarrassment. But listen, she whispered, the mood shifting. I need to tell you something major. I remember everything. Kieran wasn't shocked. After getting the tea from the servants earlier that day, he already had a hunch something went down. What did he want? Money again? Kieran clenched his fists. The audacity of that guy coming back for cash. From now on, he growled, I'm never letting him hurt you again. I can't stand seeing you suffer because of him, if I still have a shot. Lilia could feel his hand literally trembling as he spoke. I'm so sorry. I don't want you looking at me with hate in your eyes like before. Lilia squeezed his hand, gentle as ever. Look at me. Do you see any hate right now? My memories came back, but my heart? That hasn't changed a bit. Seeing her stand her ground, Kieran finally relaxed, but the guilt was still eating him up. I'm the son of the man who killed your mother, and I forced you to be with me. Can you ever forgive me? Those words instantly triggered a flashback. Lilia was back in her childhood. The Countess had promised a trip to the Duke's estate, her one chance to maybe see her mom, who was working there as a maid. But if you embarrass me, deal's off, the Countess sneered. And as punishment for acting up earlier, you're staying in this room until tomorrow. No dinner. Lilia's heart sank, starving again, but the thought of going to the Duke's mansion was enough to keep her going. The very next day, the Countess dragged her along to the estate, and that was the exact moment she first laid eyes on Kieran. The adults wanted to gossip, so they shooed the kids away. Lilia was practically buzzing with joy. This was her chance to find her mother. But the place was huge, and she had zero clue where to look. Desperate, she turned to the boy standing next to her, Kieran, and just went for it. Have you heard of a maid named Sinai? Kieran definitely knew who she was. But he wasn't about to spill the beans just yet. Kieran immediately put up a wall. He made it crystal clear that the Duke's estate secrets were classified intel not for outsiders. But Lilia wasn't about to let a little thing like protocol stop her. Fine, keep your secrets, she challenged. Just give me the silent VIP tour instead. Kieran blinked, totally blindsided by her loophole. Defeated, he resigned himself to being her personal tour guide. But she didn't just come once. We did the backyard lake last time, she breezed in a few days later. Way too massive. Let's hit the West Wing today. It became their ritual. Over and over, he patiently escorted her around the grounds. Ironically, the dynamic shifted. It was Lilia who snapped first. She was done with the games and demanded the location point blank. Kieran was genuinely confused. Why was this noble girl obsessing over a random servant? It didn't add up. Lilia bit her lip, scrambling for a believable cover story. She couldn't drop the "she's my mom" bomb. She used to be my nanny, she lied smoothly. We're super close. That explanation finally worked. Kieran caved. It's the staff's break time. She should be around here. Hearing that, Lilia lit up like a Christmas tree. So much that she literally tripped over her own feet. Kieran laughed ruthlessly at her clumsiness, yet he still knelt down to wipe the mud off her dress. Watch your step next time, he warned, though his touch was gentle. Cleaned up, they headed straight for the servants' quarters. And there she was. Lilia spotted her mom working in a room. Sinai froze, eyes going wide. She immediately started tugging at her clothes, trying desperately to hide the bruises covering her body. I have to work, Sinai lied, practically pushing her daughter out the door. But Lilia wasn't quitting. She kept showing up at the ducal house constantly. Eventually, the act fell apart, and she saw the gruesome reality of her mother's injuries. Panic set in. Desperate, her only play was to beg the Duchess for mercy. Big mistake. The woman just stared with ice-cold eyes. That servant belongs to Kieran's household, she scoffed. Meaning, she is my property. Why would I waste a doctor on a miserable servant? But the real gut punch was yet to come. Lilia realized the horror show on her mother's body wasn't an accident. The Duchess had inflicted every single wound herself. It all clicked. The Countess's silence was a setup. The sick plan was to force Lilia to watch her own mother rot away slowly. And the worst part? Kieran had known the truth this entire time. Back in the present, the memory hit her like a truck. Tears started streaming down her face before she could stop them. Kieran panicked, rushing to wipe her cheeks, mumbling apologies. Lilia patted the spot next to her. "I just had a major flashback to when we were kids," she whispered. "You know what I first thought of you? Honestly, I thought you were a total jerk for gatekeeping my mom. But actually hanging out with you, you made me happier than I've ever been. And honestly, reading together was a total vibe. I've been crushing on you since we were just kids." Kieran finally let the emotional floodgates open. "Back in the day, every time you flashed that smile, my heart would literally beat out of my chest. But I froze. I never told you where the maid was, even though I knew she was facing my mother's twisted wrath and torture. I regret that kid logic every single day. Maybe if I'd just spoken up sooner, we could have pulled off a rescue mission." "I'm the reason you lost your mom." Lilia cut him off, refusing to let him spiral. She knew Kieran was just a terrified child back then, powerless to stop anything. If he had stepped in, the Duchess would have turned her rage on him. "I shouldn't have blamed you for a mistake born of fear. I'm so sorry I was so harsh on you before. You don't need to apologize anymore. My love for you hasn't changed." Meanwhile, desperate for a baby brother, Cadell was holding a summit with his plushie. "I told you I wanted to go see Mom. Why am I on lockdown? Even when Mom was sick before, she'd come check on me. Something fishy is going on. That's why she's ghosting me." He hugged the stuffed toy, anxiety creeping in. "Is Mom unhappy because Dad is back?" He quickly shook off that negative thought. Suddenly, a knock echoed. Cadell, convinced it was Mom, sprinted to the door with pure hype. Disappointment hit him like a truck when he saw the maid. Immediately salty, he grumbled, "Oh, it's just you." The maid explained she was just checking his sleep schedule. "I can handle myself. You're dismissed." She noticed the little guy was fuming because he hadn't gotten his mom time. Cadell's face was beet red as he pouted. "Young master, I have a top secret scoop, just for you. The madam is actually preparing a massive surprise for you." Cadell's mood flipped instantly. His brain started racing. What was Mom cooking up? The maid played up the suspense. "The madam told me to keep my lips sealed, but I guess I can let you in on the secret. Young master, your mom is getting ready to give you a baby brother." He blinked, asking repeatedly if this was for real. He remembered promising Dad he'd be okay sleeping without Mom if it meant getting a sibling. When Cadell made a move to run find her right now, the maid quickly improvised a fairy tale. "See, a baby needs a very specific magical bird to deliver it. If a couple has good vibes, the bird visits. But this bird is super high maintenance. To make sure it keeps coming back, it needs total privacy from dusk till dawn. If the bird gets spooked and leaves, no baby brother." Cadell, being the innocent kid he was, bought the story hook, line, and sinker. "I promised Dad I wanted a brother, and now I know Mom isn't ignoring me because she hates me. I can totally handle waiting." The maid tucked him in, his face glowing with anticipation. The next morning, Lilia felt like she'd run a marathon, body aching all over. She didn't even notice Kieran slip into the room until he startled her. "I came because I was worried you were feeling rough. Wait, aren't you swamped today? Nothing ranks higher than you on my priority list. But I need to know, what trash did the Count spew that day?" He said, "If I didn't pay up, he'd expose my commoner roots. But you already know my history. I told you as a kid that Sinai wasn't my nanny, but my biological mother." Kieran was stunned the Count would use that as leverage. "I was cornered. He even threatened to bulldoze my mother's grave. Every time I tried to push back, he dangled that over my head. I've wanted to cut ties with him for ages. Before we got married, he made my life a living hell. He mostly starved me, and yeah, sometimes he got physical." Kieran, hearing this horror story, pulled her into a crushing hug. "That's why I projected everything onto you. My family was falling apart, and you arrived late. I resented you so much. I'm sorry for hurting you. I just hope you and Cadell can forgive me." She reassured him that they were past the trauma now. Everyone who truly loved her was right there. "But I have one more bomb to drop. I know where your mother is buried." Kieran had always carried the guilt of not saving Sinai, so he had secretly arranged a dignified funeral for her years ago. Lilia never imagined her mother, a mere servant, had been treated with such respect after death. She also realized the Count had been gaslighting her the entire time. Kieran had kept quiet because he was terrified she wouldn't believe him back then. Lilia was overwhelmed by the silent moves he had made for her. After all, he was just a scared kid back then, too. In reality, Kieran's childhood was a nightmare. His own mother beat and verbally abused him constantly. That's why Lilia was his lifeline, the only light in his darkness. She was the one who saved his tragic, lonely soul. Meanwhile, the Count's situation was going south fast. His nephew stormed the house. The Count tried to rage quit and kick him out, but it was useless. The nephew made it clear he didn't care about the noble title. He was there to take care of the Count because the Duke had cut him a massive check. He signaled the guards, who tied the Count up like cargo. The nephew delivered the final blow cold-bloodedly. This is the price for your endless greed and exploiting people. Relax. I'll dump your body deep in the woods and stage it to look like a tragic carriage accident. The Count never saw that ending coming. A few days later, Lilia was back to full health. The maid excitedly pulled out. A letter from Lady Fennell landed in Lilia's hands. She tore it open with zero chill, but the moment she scanned the ink, her face went stone cold. She turned to her maid, voice steady. "We've got work to do. A super adorable guest is heading our way." The maid instantly clocked it Lady Fennell's daughter. Lilia had been hyping up this kid's cuteness nonstop. Buzzing with excitement, the maid promised to roll out the red carpet, top-tier desserts, and the fancy tea. But she had one burning question. Why did the letter address Lilia as fairy? Lilia just wanted to crawl into a hole and die from embarrassment. Back when she was tiny, she used to pray for a fairy godmother to swoop in and save her. That wish never came true. Now, she was just hyped to make Nia's wish happen. Magic fairies might be fake, but real people who hate seeing others suffer, they definitely exist. Lilia gazed out the window, staring up at the sky. "Mom, I really miss you, but it's going to be a long time before we meet again. Right now, I've got to protect my son and husband. They're my whole world. So, just wait for me a little longer, okay?" A few days later, Lilia had Cadell dressed to the nines at the crack of dawn. She reminded him that 2 VIP guests were dropping by any second. In her head, she was already picturing the adorable first meeting between the kids. Sure, in the original timeline, their meetup was a disaster, but this time, the script had completely flipped. Cadell obediently locked his pinky with hers. He had a perfect track record. After all, he never broke. A promise to his mom. Lilia beamed, swearing that once this was over, she'd bake his absolute favorite walnut pie. His eyes instantly lit up like sparklers, and he vowed to be on his best behavior. Finally, Nia arrived. She stepped out of the carriage, clutching her mom's hand. Watching this, Lilia and the maid were internally screaming. Nia is literally too cute to handle. The second Nia spotted Lilia, she yelled out, "Fairy!" Hearing that, the servant started whispering. Does she mean the madam is gorgeous like a fairy? Lilia panicked. She rushed to shush Nia. "No fairy talk allowed!" Nia slapped her hands over her mouth, claiming she didn't mean to blow Lilia's secret cover. Lilia melted at the kids' pure vibes, but then Cadell stepped up, blocked Nia from Lilia, and dropped a serious warning. "She's not your fairy. She's my mom. Don't cause drama." This was definitely not the heartwarming scene Lilia had pictured in her head. Switching gears, she complimented Lady Fennell, noting she looked way healthier than before. Lady Fennell thanked her for the help, then nudged Nia to remember her manners and say hello properly first. Nia, being the good kid she is, immediately dropped a polite curtsy to the room. Then, she turned to apologize to Cadell. "I totally get how you feel, little Duke. Can you forgive me?" Cadell shrugged. "Whatever. You already said sorry to Mom. And look, my bad. I promised Mom I'd look out for you, but I just freaked you out instead." Hearing that, Nia grabbed his hand, beaming. "I'm so happy you're my second friend my age. We're gonna have a blast today." Cadell looked low-key annoyed about the hand-holding, but he didn't pull away. Lilia caught the vibe immediately. She suggested he take Nia on a tour of the Duke's mansion, watching them walk away. Lilia knew he already liked her. Meanwhile, Lady Fennell was bursting with questions. Lilia steered them to the parlor. The moment they stepped in, Lady Fennell started pouring out her gratitude. Her one dream was watching Nia grow up, but her health had been tanking. Thanks to the flowers Lilia sent, she actually had the strength to go out with her daughter. Lilia flashed back to the tragic fate of that family in her past life. She knew Lady Fennell loved her daughter more than anything. She just smiled, insisting that anyone else in her shoes would have done the exact same thing. But Lady Fennell was puzzled. How did Lilia know about the illness? To everyone else, she just looked a bit frail. Truth was, in the original novel, Nia inherited that sickness. Cadell had to trek across the entire continent just to find her a cure. Obviously, Lilia couldn't spoil the plot, so she whipped up an excuse. "You don't look like someone who was born weak. It looked like an illness. I just happened to hear that moonlight flowers are amazing for detoxing the body." Lady Fennell thanked Lilia for giving her hope again the chance to actually live and watch her daughter grow up. Meanwhile, out in the garden, Nia was trailing Cadell, chattering a mile a minute. Her endless questions were getting on his nerves, but he still led her to his secret hideout for snack time. The staff had prepped everything perfectly. The moment the kids sat down, tea and cakes were served. Nia was instantly laser-focused on the dessert spread. She eagerly grabbed the strawberry cake to take a bite. Cadell watched her silently from across the table, thinking she actually looked pretty cute. when she wasn't talking. Noticing a smudge of frosting on her lip, he went full gentleman and offered her his handkerchief. Nia suddenly realizes she just committed a major social foul, but Cadell steps in to smooth it over, reminding her they're just kids and don't need to act all stiff and grown up. Nia's heart melts a little. Looking at this boy, he seems frosty on the outside, but is a total softie on the inside. She compares his kindness to the Duchess, and boom, Cadell turns bright red instantly. He is secretly loving that comparison to his mom. He thinks Nia has impeccable taste, just pure innocence right there. But a second later, he wants to take it all back. Nia drops a bomb. "You're the only friend I have who's my age, besides Lattice." She starts gushing about how their moms are besties and how she loves hanging out with Lattice because he's so nice. Cadell's mood crashes. He snaps, asking if she tosses the word like around for everyone. Nia gets defensive, explaining she doesn't like everyone. Just that hanging with Lattice is a vibe. Then she flashes a smile so sweet it leaves Cadell totally stunned. But deep down, he is fuming with jealousy because she practically admitted she prefers Lattice. Nia, being a bit slow on the uptake, finally notices he's upset, so she goes for a head pat to comfort him. Cadell plays it cool, brushing her hand away like he doesn't care. But internally, it is absolute chaos. The truth is, he has already completely accepted her as his friend. Then Nia leans in close, hitting him with the real question. "Why won't you just call me by my name?" Blushing hard, Cadell finally whispers it. In the background, the maid is practically fangirling seeing these two getting along. Suddenly, they realize the sun is going down. Nia grabs Cadell by the arm and drags him on a sprint to find her mom. Goodbye time hits way too fast. Nia shoots her shot and asks Cadell if she can come back and hang out again. Cadell's answer is smooth as silk. "I'll have the chef keep a strawberry cake waiting for you." Lilia breathes a huge sigh of relief hearing that. Looks like the tragic plot twist is officially cancelled. A few days later, at the crack of dawn, Lilia wakes up confused. She peeks out the window and spots Cadell and the maid doing something weird with holy water. Then it clicks. She remembers that bizarre comment the maid made ages ago. She didn't think they'd actually be dousing the place in holy water. Look, the Duke is loaded, but this is just burning money. She decides she has to stop the madness. The guard spots her and does a double take. She is never up this early. Lilia explains that the racket outside woke her up, so she came out to investigate the chaos. The guard pulls out a small vial and explains they are doing a spiritual deep clean with the holy stuff. Lilia notices his bottle is empty, guilty as charged. The guard insists they can't risk anything bad happening to the lady. He's not sure if it counts as wasting cash, but he's taking no chances. He's doing it out of love. Lilia asks if there's any water left, and the guard thinks she wants in on the action. Nope, she just can't stand watching liquid gold get poured into the dirt. Once he gets it, the guard promises to ship the leftover supplies straight to Lilia's room. Meanwhile, Cadell and the maid are still out there, absolutely loving their holy water party. With this chore done, Lilia plotted a swift exit, terrified someone would spot her and rope her into some random drama. Her fingers grazed her bare collarbone, a stark reminder that she hadn't worn her mother's memorial pendant in ages. She'd traded that necklace to the witch, yet the details remained a total blur. For some reason, this nagging guilt kept telling her she didn't deserve this happiness. Suddenly, Kieran materialized, snapping her out of her spiral. He mentioned he had to bounce for some business matters. Brushing his thumb against her cheek, he asked what was eating her up inside. "You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders," he whispered. "Talk to me." But Lilia wasn't about to stress him out with her memory drama. Instead, she pivoted, claiming she hated how formal he was with her name. "I met this noblewoman recently," she started. Her husband never uses her real name. Kieran just stood there, totally buffered for a second. Recovering fast, he asked what kind of pet name she was vibing with. Blushing hard, Lilia threw out options. You know, like honey, sweetheart, or treasure. Couples pick names for each other. I want that level of intimacy, just like Lady Fina has. Kieran shrugged it off, telling her to stick with Kieran. Then it hit her. Kieran was already a nickname. Her face turned 50 shades of red. Voice trembling, she asked him to call her honey. Without missing a beat, he dropped the word like it was second nature. Honey. She couldn't believe he just casually dropped that cringeworthy title without even blinking, while she was over there dying of embarrassment. Then she remembered his work. "Wait, don't you have to go?" But Kieran waved it off. "That can wait. You're the priority." They made plans to visit her mom's grave later that week. Fast forward a few days, the trio arrived at the cemetery, and Cadell was full of questions. Seeing his mom looking all gloomy, the kid asked, "Is the person we're visiting gonna be a jerk like Grandpa?" Lilia shook her head. "No, sweetie. This person means the world to Mommy." Cadell looked like he understood about 50% of that. He dropped the subject as they reached the site. Lilia gazed at the mausoleum and realized Kieran had been secretly keeping it in pristine condition. With a heavy heart, she rushed toward her mother's headstone. Kieran read the room and hung back to give her a moment. Ideally, he steered Cadell toward the nearby woods for a walk. The kid was confused, wondering why they weren't saying hi to the mystery person. Kieran crouched down. "This is a bit complex, champ. You're still a little young to get the full picture." Cadell pouted, annoyed at being treated like a baby. "I'm the family heir," he declared. "I can learn stuff." Kieran ruffled the boy's hair, smirking. "That reaction right there? Proof you're still a kiddo." Cadell looked up, impatient. "When can we go back to Mommy?" The Duke held him back. "Hold your horses. Mom needs some alone time." Cadell wasn't done with the questions. "Dad, Grandpa, was super mean to Mom. He's not coming back, is he?" Kieran's expression hardened as he promised. "That man will never step foot in our house again." "Because he's dead," Kieran whispered. "But Mom doesn't know, so let's keep this our little secret." Cadell puffed up his chest. "Got it. My lips are sealed. If Mom gets mad at you again, I'll be in a tough spot," the boy rambled. "I mean, that special stork only brings a baby brother or sister if you two are totally in love." Kieran froze, looking at his son like he just spoke an alien language. Cadell doubled down, warning him seriously. "So no fighting with Mom, or I don't get a sibling." Kieran instantly realized the maids had been feeding the kid nonsense. Right on cue, the sky turned gray, and a light drizzle began to fall. Back at the grave, Lilia whispered to the stone, "Hey Mom, it's been way too long. I have a son of my own now. You used to be the only one who loved me," she confessed. "But now, I'm surrounded by love. I'm finally living a life with zero regrets. I'm so sorry it took me this long to come back. I love you so much." The rain started coming down harder, mixing with her tears. Cadell, sensing something was up, sprinted to his mom, only to find her eyes puffy and red. Not wanting to scare him, Lilia lied. "It's just the rain getting in my eyes, baby." Cadell frowned immediately. "Then let's go home. Like, right now," he insisted. "Hold on," Lilia stopped him. "Before we go, say hello to Grandma. Just tell her you're my precious boy." Cadell stared at the stone, confused. "But nobody's there." Lilia smiled sadly. "She's traveling on a planet far, far away." His face lit up with realization as he composed himself. "Oh, okay. Hi there. I'm Mom's favorite person. I'm Cadell, and I'm gonna be an even cooler Duke than Dad one day." While he bragged, Kieran draped a raincoat over the little guy's shoulders. "Looks like my son has big dreams," Kieran chuckled. "But let's keep you dry first." He wrapped another coat around Lilia, checking if she was okay, before turning his gaze to the tombstone. He made a silent vow to the grave. "I'm going to make her the happiest woman alive. You have my word. Rest easy now." Lilia watched him, realizing he always talked to her mom when they visited. She grabbed both their hands, beaming. "Mom, check this out. This is my amazing son and the husband I adore. We're all here for you today. I'm genuinely happy now. I smile every single day. So please, don't worry about me anymore. I'm going to be seeing a lot more of you." That night, Lilia retreated to her room, but as she stepped inside, a bone-deep chill instantly seized her. Brushing it off as pure exhaustion, she drifted into a heavy slumber, but her mind didn't rest. Instead, she was transported to a desolate, frozen wasteland. She whipped around. There, gleaming in the snow, was that long-lost pendant. Her gaze traveled upward, landing on a startling sight: her younger self, clutching the medallion tight, begging the witch to see her mother one last time. The witch's voice was cold but regretful. "I'm sorry, child. That is beyond my power. Because your mother is gone." The witch offered a different deal. "However, I can rewind the clock 10 years. Lilia hesitated. If she couldn't reunite with her mom, then turning back time was meaningless. But the witch threw a curveball, admitting she was bluffing. "You're asking why I'd lie to a child? They claim the Winter Witch is all-knowing," the entity mused. "Looks like the rumors were wrong. Let's put your conviction to the test. I'm granting you a brand new life. If your theory holds water, then you won't lose. In this new reality, you'll be drowning in love. Care to roll the dice? You might not have your mother, but you'll have a life overflowing with affection." Lilia took the bait. "Fine," the witch grinned. "Let's make a wager. I'm rewriting your destiny, but I'm keeping your memories intact. I need to prove I'm omniscient, and that true happiness comes from letting go of the past. Here's the deal. You can choose a blissful, carefree existence, or you can claw back your old memories and revert to the original Lilia. But if you choose to return to your old self, that proves I won the bet." Lilia was cocky. She was absolutely certain that once she tasted this new life, she'd ditch her old identity in a heartbeat. She knew she'd crush this wager. To seal the deal, the witch snatched the pendant as collateral. Lilia gasped, jolting awake in a cold sweat. What the hell did that mean? If she chose her old self, what was the price tag? Ever since that nightmare, Lilia was obsessed. She needed dirt on the Winter Witch, and she needed it now. Her maid noticed Lilia practically living in the library, and finally asked what she was hunting for. When Lilia dropped the name Winter Witch, the maid lit up. "You might want to check the underground archives," she whispered. Underground archives? That was news to Lilia. The maid explained her mother, who served the previous duke, spilled the tea years ago. Apparently, the old duke used to sneak down to the basement every single night at midnight. Rumor had it, that's where the family stashed the real heavy-duty magical relics were hidden. The maid figured a private vault like that would hold secrets you couldn't find in the public stacks. Lilia nodded. Solid logic. But the maid couldn't help herself why the sudden obsession with a fairy tale witch. Then, the maid's eyes went wide with a wild theory. Madam, are you looking for a fertility spell? Another little miss running around? Lilia blinked. Wow, that girl had an imagination. Shaking off the awkwardness, Lilia marched up to the study door, hesitating just for a second. She was rehearsing her opening line when Kieran swung the door open. Got a minute? She asked. Kieran agreed instantly, completely ignoring his assistant's death glare. The poor aide tried to point at the mountain of unread paperwork, but he didn't expect his boss to go rogue. Kieran didn't just dump all the work on the guy. He practically flexed his romance right in the assistant's face. Defeated, the aide just sighed. Have fun. Kieran scooped Lilia up and carried her all the way to the woods. Setting her down, he smiled. We used to hang out here all the time. Back when we were brats. Ring a bell? The air's crisp. Hey, do you know how to ride? Lilia admitted her dad kept her on a short leash, no riding allowed. Moments later, Kieran returned, leading a majestic horse, and hoisted her up. They trotted through the greenery, and Kieran promised he'd clear his schedule to give her proper lessons later. They ended up by the lake, triggering a massive flashback for Lilia. She remembered running way too far out, chasing some stupid bird. She remembered Kieran sprinting, his face turning ghost white. That's when she saw it, his back was soaked in blood. He tried to play it cool, claiming an old wound just popped open. Naive little Lilia wanted to snitch to the Duchess immediately. That's when the truth bomb hit. The Duchess was the one who inflicted the injuries. Lilia couldn't wrap her head around a mother doing that to her own kid, but since she held his dark secret, she felt she owed him one of hers. So, she confessed that the lowly maid was actually her biological mother. She never forgot the pact they made that day, to survive and find happiness together. But after that day, radio silence. They never saw each other again. Kieran looked gutted, regretting every word he left unsaid back then. If he had spoken up, maybe they wouldn't have drifted so far apart. Lilia shrugged it off, saying she just needed to vent at the time. She felt terrible for the pain she caused him, and for that little boy, a million apologies wouldn't scratch the surface. Kieran cut her off gently. Ancient history, he assured her. Lilia smiled, admitting she'd been genuinely happy lately, and I'm terrified of losing this joy. Kieran looked confused. Why the sudden doom and gloom? That's when she dropped the question. Do you know the legend of the Winter Witch? Kieran froze. That came out of left field. Lilia decided to rip off the band-aid. She was done with secrets. Okay, truth is, I made a high-stakes bet with the Winter Witch, gambling on whether I was lying or not. Did you ever think we'd end up together but, like, totally miserable? Kieran admitted that thought never even crossed his mind, because he always pictured a happily ever after with her. But I know that dark timeline exists, she insisted, because I literally lived that life already. Spoiler alert, neither of us got a happy ending. I completely wrecked your life. After dropping that bombshell, Lilia started spiraling. Terrified he wouldn't believe her. The next second, Kieran pulled her into a tight hug and just asked what her past life was like. Lilia let out a breath she didn't know she was holding, relieved she didn't have to solo this boss fight anymore. I love you so much, but I can't spill everything. Back then, I didn't think I deserved happiness. The first time I met the Winter Witch, I begged her to let me see my mom, but she could only send me back 10 years, and she thought I was bluffing. I knew I wasn't lying, so I made a bet with her. I chose this timeline with you and Cadell to fix my past mistakes. You guys are my absolute world. But I lied. So I lost. The witch is coming to collect soon. Kieran squeezed her tighter, insisting the witch wouldn't touch her. Lilia thought he was just trying to comfort her. Then Kieran suddenly flipped the script. Hey, do you know why I became the heir to the duchy? Lilia blinked, confused. Isn't it because you were born with the same OP skills as the previous duke? Kieran continued. My mom was actually a witch. After she had me, she suddenly snagged the title of Duchess. Lilia remembered the Duchess passed away from a terminal illness. Wait, just like you thought. My mom made a deal with the Winter Witch too. Her goal was to become the Duchess. Lilia asked. What? Was the price tag on that bet? Her life? Kieran shook his head. Nope, her sickness was incurable until the bitter end. The Winter Witch actually came looking for me, said she was here to collect the debt. And the price? I was banned from ever being happy. I was already down bad, and the witch still wanted to snatch the little joy I had. That's why I won't let history repeat itself. Major protector vibes. Later, they got home and found Cadell with a super grumpy face. Where were you and Dad? Why'd I get left behind? Lilia quickly explained they just went for some fresh air, promising if they did anything fun, they definitely would have taken him. If you don't believe me, ask Dad. She spun around. Right, honey? Where did we go? Kieran answered, looking totally clueless. Like Mom said, just a walk around the block. Besides, weren't you in class? We were barely gone. Don't be salty just because we didn't take you. That just made Cadell more pressed. But you take her every day. I'm holding back from seeing Mom. Because I'm waiting for that special bird. You guys are too much. Hearing this, Lilia turned bright red, internally screaming at her husband for not explaining the whole bird situation clearly. Then came Cadell's interrogation. When is that special bird dropping off my present? Dad promised. He said the bird brings a baby brother or sister. Mom, you also said I could have any gift I wanted. I've been ready to be a big bro forever. Lilia could only promise she'd try her absolute best. Cadell's eyes lit up like anime sparkles immediately. Lilia quickly pivoted, asking what kind of dessert he wanted for his upcoming birthday. That successfully distracted him. Can you make me a super giant cake? Lilia hugged him. You got it. I've already got the design planned out. Also, want to go on a trip south with Mom before your birthday? Immediately, Kieran chimed in that he'd clear his schedule to go too, but Lilia teased him. I think Dad is way too busy. This time, it's a mother-son trip only. Consider it punishment for the bird lie. Cadell was living for the drama on the sidelines. The next morning, bright and early, Kieran tracked down Lilia. He found an old book about the Winter Witch in the secret underground library. It had way more details than the fairy tales. He told Lilia she could ask him for help with anything, that he'd happily do whatever she needed. Then he headed off to work. After wistfully waving goodbye to her husband, she cracked open the book he brought. It contained records of the witch's likes and personality, written like someone who knew her personally. Apparently, the witch often granted wishes just because she was bored with life. To her, this whole thing was just a game. Trying to stay optimistic, Lilia thought maybe the witch grants wishes to watch a person's destiny. Do a complete 180. Lilia decided worrying was useless. Priority number one right now was Cadell's birthday. Thinking too hard made her crash, and she fell asleep right on the table. Who knew she'd respawn back in that place? Lilia, long time no see. You still remember me, right? You know exactly why I'm here. Lilia knew. The witch was definitely here to collect the debt. My, look at that face. Fix your face. You're looking at me like I'm the villain here. My price is fair. Trust me. She didn't wait for a response before tossing the necklace right back into Lilia's hands. But she never actually dropped a number. Instead, she just teased, asking if Lilia was terrified she'd swipe her current happiness as payment. Listen, I just swung by to tell you. I can't cash in on that debt just yet. But mark my words, I'll be back for you before winter wraps up. Don't look so stressed, though. Seeing where your destiny is heading actually puts a smile on my face. Consider this a bonus reward, a golden opportunity. Honestly, you should be thanking me. Instead of stressing over me, you need to focus elsewhere. That twisted fate of yours, it could slip through your fingers at any second. Lilia snapped awake, those cryptic words looping in her head. It didn't add up. In her memories, the Empire never faced any major crisis. Kieran held the North like a fortress. Any invasion or external beef got crushed instantly. She literally couldn't picture any other outcome. She was so deep in the zone that she didn't even hear the maid calling her name. Ma'am, the carriage is pulled up. You didn't forget your tea date with the ladies today, did you? The schedule finally clicked. Where's Cadell? When she heard he was already curbside by the carriage, Lilia scrambled to catch up. Sure enough, Cadell was standing by the door, waiting. Lilia immediately dropped to his eye level. I am so sorry, sweetie. Mommy totally forgot to remind you. You're not mad at me, are you? He shook his head fast, no hard feelings. But why'd you run out here all by yourself? You usually wait for me to come get you. Cadell's face turned into a tomato instantly. Lilia clocked it immediately. Let me guess. Someone's in a hurry to see Nia? Busted. He started shaking his head frantically, trying to play it cool and failing miserably. Instead of answering, he just yanked her hand to get her into the carriage. Lilia couldn't help but smile. Kids and their little secrets were too precious. Inside the ride, Cadell was a bundle of nerves the whole trip, mostly because he'd promised Nia he'd bake her a strawberry cake for their next hang. Problem was, this wasn't a playdate at the mansion. Lilia grinned and offered a fix. How about we host the next one? That way, you can hand-deliver that cake to her personally. That did the trick. Cadell looked satisfied. Then, his eyes locked onto the new accessory she was wearing. Lilia explained it was something super special, and asked if he wanted a peek. She popped the locket open. Cadell tilted his head, curious. Who is she? Lilia paused, not sure how to drop that lore just yet. I'll tell you when you're older. They sealed it with a promise. As soon as they pulled up, Lilia saw Marchioness Fenwick was already on site. Cadell, meanwhile, was scanning the area like a radar. When Mom teased him about looking for Nia, he shut it down fast, claiming he absolutely did not care where she was. Marchioness Fenwick bent down to his level. Nia's running a little late, sweetie, but Lattice is already waiting for you. I wasn't looking for her, Cadell mumbled, totally shy. Just then, Lattice walked up, greeting Lilia and Cadell with a polite grin. Cadell rolled his eyes. You're saying hello before you even get here? Chill out. Lattice stepped closer. Talking about me? Nia's on her way. I was just setting things up. That's why I'm late. I know we haven't faced off in a while, but let's call a truce today. We can't let Nia get hurt. They shook on it, peace treaty signed. Lilia felt a wave of relief seeing the boys shake hands. Suddenly, Marchioness Fenwick spotted a carriage pulling up behind them. Lady Fennell had arrived, with Nia in tow. The second Nia hopped out, she sprinted straight to Lilia. Duchess, all the dresses you sent were amazing. It took me forever to pick one. Do you like this outfit? Lilia beamed, hyping her up. You look stunning, sweetie. Like a fresh spring flower. Honestly, you'd look perfect in a potato sack. No need to stress about the choice. Nia lit up at the praise. Lilia gently reminded her that Cadell and Lattice were waiting. Nia quickly waved goodbye to Lilia and took off running toward the boys, barely watching where she was going. Her reckless sprint gave everyone a mini heart attack. Be careful, they shouted in unison. Nia skidded to a stop, on her tiptoes, striking a pose to show she hadn't wiped out. The adults finally exhaled. Nia grabbed the boys' hands. I think today's gonna be a blast. Before they could react, she yanked them forward. Come on, this way. The ladies finally settled in for tea. Marchioness Fenwick brought up a rumor. I heard you've been taking riding lessons. Lately? Yeah, Lilia replied. Watching my husband ride looked so cool, I figured I'd give it a shot. Lady Fennell chimed in. The Duke is so attentive. Seems like he'd move mountains for you. Lilia blushed, looking down. Yeah, he's a really good person. The other two ladies practically squealed with excitement at her reaction. Seeing the girls so hyped, Lilia decided to channel that energy and ask them to help set up Cadell's birthday bash. Meanwhile, the kid squad was already deep in their own high-stakes debate. Cadell noticed Lattice was giving Mia super vague answers, which annoyed him since he'd been overthinking his own words earlier. Mia was rambling about the morning chill, then whipped around to grill Cadell, asking if he was even tuning in. Just then, Anya waltzed in, cheeks stuffed like a chipmunk. Cadell confirmed he was listening, while gently wiping a crumb off her lip and asking if Anya was her nickname. She froze, realizing she was a mess again. Thanks. Everyone just calls me Nia, that beam of pure sunshine. Left Cadell totally whipped. For a second, he selfishly wished he could gatekeep that smile from the rest of the world. Then, his mom's advice echoed in his mind. If you love something, value it. Don't try to own it. Give it wings instead. He remembered asking if it wouldn't just fly away. His mom had shut that down. Not necessarily. If you give it freedom and it still returns to you, that's proof it loves you back. Don't cage your love. Give it security. Treat it with heart, and trust that love will find its way back. Cadell didn't know why that memory hit him right now, but he was snapped back to reality by Nia, begging him to use her nickname too. Inside, he was screaming yes, but his tsundere side took over. When you learn to eat without wearing your food, maybe I will. Nia instantly pouted, calling him a total meanie. Cadell noticed Lattice had zero interest in their drama, which was perfect. He only wanted Mia to pick up on his vibes. They moved on to the next agenda item, games. Mia mapped out the plan, hit the garden for the new blooms, then demolished the dessert table. The flowers are gorgeous, and the cookies slap. Honestly, the snacks were the main reason she loved crashing at Lattice's place. Hearing Naya's excited rant, Cadell checked in with Lattice. Lattice shrugged, claiming he just needed to see Naya, because she was adorable. Meanwhile, Mia was eyeing the incoming strawberry cake with laser focus. I want a massive strawberry cake for my B-day. That one at the Duke's mansion was legendary. She immediately grilled Lattice on his birth date. Finding out it was summer, she pivoted to Cadell. Winter. It's basically here. Mia lit up like a Christmas tree that meant strawberry cake season was officially open. Cadell promised the invites were as good as sent. On the other side of the room, the moms were deep in party planning mode. Marchioness Fenwick argued that they needed to pack the house. Lady Fennell totally backed her up. She had invited a huge crowd for Nia's bash, and the kid loved it. If you need backup, they chirped, we can network with the other ladies for you. But Lilia shut that down immediately, explaining that Cadell hated being around strangers. The Marchioness and Lady Fennell insisted they would definitely come, though. The kids were a squad after all. Lilia nodded quickly. Of course, Cadell loves hanging with his inner circle. The two ladies promised to bring plenty of entertainment for the kids. Suddenly, the Marchioness let out a heavy sigh. It's such a blessing to have this peace. Usually, this time of year is pure chaos. Lilia blinked. How come? Our territory gets hit with war constantly. If the Duke wasn't holding it down, we'd be in shambles. I'm so grateful he protects us. That's the only reason we can sit here, sipping tea. It hit Lilia that Kieran might actually be facing a war zone, since he was always gone. She used to think his trips were just routine, never even giving him a proper send-off. Yet he was out there risking it all to keep her safe. Now, she was desperate to protect him too. The other two ladies shared her worry about the border. The mood in the room plummeted. Lilia was terrified that the price the witch mentioned was linked to Kieran, which made his absences nerve-wracking. Just then, Lady Fennell suggested sending an embroidery piece as a charm. When Lilia asked what design to stitch, the ladies answered in perfect sync. Anything you pour your soul into works. It's gotta be the ultimate symbol of your love. Lilia promised she'd give it some serious thought. That night, on the ride home, Cadell dropped a bomb. He suddenly asked how Lilia and his dad actually tied the knot. It caught her off guard. She figured he'd been too busy, hanging with his squad, to care. Why the sudden curiosity? Then he kept going. I remember Mom saying that. If you truly love something, you don't cage it. You gotta let it fly free. If it really loves me back, it'll come home. I want to know if Dad was the same way. Lilia opened up to Cadell. She used to think marriage was basically a prison sentence, but then she realized Kieran had been her silent guardian angel the whole time. After hearing that, Cadell made a wish that one day could be someone else's sanctuary too. She pulled him into a hug. Of course, sweetie. It's impossible not to love you. Soon enough, they pulled up to the mansion gates, but the vibe was off. Her stomach dropped. Seeing the servants standing there looking grim, she demanded to know what was up. The maid finally spilled the tea the Count had been in a nasty accident on the road. An accident meant injuries or worse. Watching the maid hesitate like that, Lilia had a flashback. In her past life, this exact scenario played out, and everyone ended up dead. Noticing Cadell listening intently right next to her, she shut it down. She couldn't discuss this in front of him. Maybe the maid read the room, and that's why she was holding back. Lilia decided to hustle Cadell inside first, telling the maid she already got the gist and would talk to Kieran later. That night, after Kieran wrapped up his business, he found Lilia still wide awake. She admitted she couldn't sleep. He asked if the Count's situation was keeping her up. Lilia nodded slowly. When I heard the news of the Count's death, I didn't feel a thing. No sadness. Nothing. Am I a monster? I'm out here playing the perfect mom, hiding his grandfather's death from Cadell. He comforted her. Cadell probably already knows. To him, the Count is just the villain who hurt his mom. You don't need to mourn someone who tortured you. She knew Kieran was behind it. He didn't deny it. He just couldn't let the Count lay another finger on her. Do you think I'm despicable for doing it? Lilia gently cupped his cheek. Despicable? How could that be? I just hate that you had to dirty your hands for me. I loathe the Count and his wife. They forced me to pretend everything was fine. After my mom passed, I wished for their death every single day. But I was terrified too. That's why. I was too scared to rebel, just a puppet on their strings. And now, I'm scared my freedom cost you your soul. He told Lilia to chill. He'd burn the world down for her. But Lilia didn't want him taking the hits for her sake. It doesn't matter. I'm strong enough to handle it, she sighed. Every year around this time, you leave for that expedition. And every time you come back, you act like it was a walk in the park. But I know you face death out there. And now, you're leaving again soon. Aren't you? Kieran's gaze softened. I have no choice. It's to protect you and our land. As your husband, keeping you safe is my job. Don't worry, I'll come back in one piece. The next day, the maid was buzzing around the room, yapping about how the Count finally got what was coming to him. Honestly, I was worried about how you'd take it, my lady. I didn't think you'd still care about that man. Lilia admitted that hearing the news gave her a rush of joy, even if she couldn't show it. He was her father, technically. But let's forget him. I have people who actually matter to me now. A week later, it was time for Kieran to head out. The maid and Cadell were obsessing over the handkerchief Lilia had embroidered. They were convinced Kieran was going to flip when he saw it. Cadell got a little jelly, saying he wanted one too. Kieran was geared up and ready to roll. He asked if they came to see him off. Lilia and Cadell answered in sync. Duh, of course. He promised to speed-run the mission and get back as soon as possible, so they shouldn't worry. Then Lilia handed over her masterpiece. Kieran stared at the handkerchief. In his hands, eyes lighting up, I pictured a majestic wolf standing on snowy ground. It reminds me of you. You're more important to me than anything, so take this. Let it remind you that someone is waiting for you back home. Don't get hurt. You have to come back safe. Kieran gazed at the cloth for a long beat, silent. Lilia panicked, thinking he hated it. Then he blurted out that he'd keep it as a family heirloom, passing it down from generation to generation. Lilia blinked, shyly asking, a family heirloom? Seriously? Why? Because it holds all my wife's love and care. That makes it priceless. Just then, Cadell rushed forward to tackle his dad in a hug. Don't worry about Mom. Just get back here safe and sound. It was go time. Kieran hopped on his horse and made a vow. I'll make it back, no matter what. I've got you guys waiting for me. A few days later, Cadell pulled a total 180. He refused to have a birthday party, no matter how hard Lilia tried to hype it up. It was a total wash. He stood his ground like a stone wall. Lilia pressed him. Why the sudden flip-flop? He wanted the full squad, mom and dad, together for the big day. But with dad still out of town, that dream was toast. Lilia read his mind instantly. She gently ruffled his hair, her voice soft. Cadell, I get it. I really do. But trust me, dad wants you to have a blast with everyone. He'd be totally crushed if he knew he ruined the vibe by missing it. So, what's the move? Anywhere you want to go? Mom's treat. We don't need a massive bash, but we gotta do something to mark the occasion. If dad found out you skipped your own birthday because of him, he'd feel terrible. How about we invite Lattice and Mia over? You guys are practically besties now, right? Suddenly, Cadell shifted, looking a little sus. He started stammering, face turning pink, and shyly asked Lilia to load the cake with strawberries. Fast forward to the big day. The mansion was in full chaos mode. The head maid was barking orders to get the decorations perfect. Lilia stepped out to check. On the cake situation, the maid confirmed it was good to go, and mentioned Cadell was actually awake. Like really early, Lilia decided to track him down first, thinking back to his last birthday. Things were icy between them. A lot can change in 1 year. Just then, Cadell came sprinting toward her. Lilia plopped a birthday hat on his head. Mom, why are we celebrating now? The party hasn't even started. Because I wanted dibs on the first happy birthday. Everything is set for the party, well, almost everything. Let's get you changed before the guests roll up. I picked out a special outfit. Cadell's eyes lit up immediately. Lilia and the maid were practically vibrating with excitement to see him in it. But once he walked out, the maid laid on the compliments thick, but Cadell looked miserable. Mom, seriously? Why are you making me wear this? He stood at the door, totally reluctant, decked out in the outfit Mom picked to greet the squad. Lilia saw his pout and offered a graceful but fake apology. Mom, are you actually sorry? Your face says otherwise. It's my birthday, so I'm wearing this forced gift, okay? Lilia promised that next time she'd prep something a bit more his style. Lips pursed, he begged her to never pull a stunt like this again. Just then, the maid dropped the intel. Guests had arrived. Marchioness Fenwick and Lady Finell pulled up together, with Lattice and Mia close behind. Welcome. I made sure there's a ton of food. You guys ready to hang out with Cadell? The kids chirped a happy yes, and Mia launched herself straight at Cadell for a massive hug. Happy birthday. Cadell went tomato red instantly. He mumbled for some personal space, but Mia didn't care. She grabbed his hand, beaming with pure joy. Lattice stepped up to hand over his gift. That's when Mia realized she left her present in the carriage. Total fail. She couldn't hand it over personally. Cadell hauled the loot back to his room. That's when Lattice finally clocked what Cadell was wearing. I gotta ask, what is up with that weird outfit? Cadell was at a total loss for words. Mia shot her hand up. I know. They're angel wings. You look so good. Lattice smirked. If I knew you were into wings, I would have bought you a pair. Three of them cracked up and started playing in the hall. Marchioness Fenwick whipped out a memory orb to capture the moment. Lilia and the Marchioness had been nervous about the kids getting along. The Marchioness smiled. Don't stress. They're just kids. I think this playdate is going to be interesting. Soon, it was chow time, and everyone showered Cadell with well wishes. Lilia nudged him to say something back. He paused, thinking it over. Then he spoke up. Thanks, everyone. I know I haven't exactly been on my best behavior lately, but from now on, I'm gonna try harder, the servants whispered, choked up about how much he'd grown. Cadell added, and thanks Lattice and Mia for coming. Mia chirped, duh, we had to be here. Wait, you love strawberry cake too? It looks so good. Cadell thought about his actual favorite pecan pie, but then he remembered that strawberry was Mia's favorite, so he just mumbled shyly that yeah, strawberries were the best. Mia beamed, saying they were totally twinning. She was obsessed with strawberries. Cadell mentioned he had tons of strawberry cake prepped, just so she could enjoy it. That little detail didn't slip past Lattice. He realized Cadell definitely had a crush on Mia, something he never thought he'd see coming. Turns out, his taste and Cadell's were worlds apart. Lilia leaned in, checking if Cadell was ready to make a wish on the candles. But get this, he actually wanted to hold off. Hey Mom, can I ask for a huge favor? Anything for you, sweetie. I'm all ears. It's nothing crazy, actually. I want you to blow out the candles with me. Lilia wasn't expecting something so wholesome. She promised they'd tackle those candles together once the sun went down. Turning to the guests, she announced, Cadell's saving the big candle moment for later. Let's dig in first. Hope you guys enjoy the spread. It didn't take long before everyone was raving about the dinner menu. Marchioness Fenwick whipped out her memory sphere, basically the magical version of a camcorder. She'd been filming the kids since the first bite. Lady Finell kept a laser focus on Nia's table manners. Even though her daughter was a year older than Cadell and Laris, she still had that innocent kid vibe. Marchioness Fenwick jumped in immediately. She's still just a baby. After all, she's doing great. Unlike Laris and Cadell, those two are locked in an eternal competition, refusing to lose. That's the only reason they're eating so neatly. Lilia nodded, totally vibing with Fenwick's take on the boys. Classic frenemies. A pang of regret hit her. She wished she could have captured these cute moments herself. That's when Lady Finelle pulled out a spare memory sphere. For you. Lilia was shook. She never expected to score a gadget like that. Now she could capture every adorable Cadell moment in the future. Soon, night fell, and the ladies started packing up to leave. Finally, Cadell was ready for the main event with Mom. It's still early, sweetie. We can take our time. But I can't miss the exact wish-making window. All right, let's do this. Cadell stared intensely at the cake. He closed his eyes, face super solemn. Please, let Dad come back safe so we can all travel to the warm south together. Lilia wasn't ready for a wish that heavy. Mom, say the line. You're right, my precious boy. Happy birthday. Meanwhile, miles away, Kieran was stuck in a tent, plotting his next military move. A soldier reported in, 0 movement from the enemy all day, sir. Kieran rubbed his temples. Suspicious. That means it's some unknown player trying to force an invasion on their own. Probably some political faction with a grudge against you, sir. They're definitely trying to spark a war. Kieran couldn't wrap his head around it. Just because he had impure blood, he was branded a traitor. His mother brought him nothing but pain. Why did everyone want him dead? All he wanted was to protect his turf and his family. Suddenly, he realized he couldn't play nice anymore. If they try to step foot here, I'm wiping them out. No survivors. If they want to trade their lives for mine, I'll make them pay the ultimate price. Back home, Lilia was constantly exhausted. She figured it was just stress overload. She'd heard Cadell got a brand new tutor recently. Her maid confirmed, yeah, the old tutor had to head south for the winter, so we brought in a sub. Lilia asked for the tea on the new hire, and the maid shifted awkwardly. Honestly, she looks sweet, but something's off. She quickly told Lilia not to stress, though. The staff welcomes her, but that hesitation triggered Lilia's internal alarm bells. I trust you more than anyone here. Don't sugarcoat it, tell me everything. If your gut says something's wrong, keep a close watch on her when she's with Cadell. The maid accepted the mission. After the maid dipped, Lilia passed out. In her dream, she saw her mother again. She poured her heart out. She was terrified for Kieran and scared the witch would come to collect her debt. She also whispered a secret wish, to have a daughter she could shower with infinite love. Just like her mom did for her, her mother wiped her tears. I'll come see you soon. Lilia figured the dream was just because she missed her mom so much. Just then, the maid returned with a bowl of sour fruit. Lilia snacked on the fruit while digging for more tutor info. The maid shrugged. Maybe I was overthinking it earlier. She's not like the others. She treats the young master like, well, a normal kid his age. Lilia frowned, confused. The maid explained, usually tutors treat him like the future duke, super formal and respectful. Even with the explanation, something didn't sit right. Lilia decided to investigate herself. She was curious about Cadell's classroom vibes anyway, and it was a good excuse to audit the teachers. Just as she arrived to check the situation, Cadell was walking out of the classroom. He came barreling toward his mom instantly. She reached out, totally caught off guard by the sudden rush. Cadell slid the bracelet he'd handcrafted right onto her wrist. Did my little man make this? It's absolutely stunning. Mom's never taking this off. Seriously. Just wait till your dad gets back. I'm gonna flex this so hard. Then, the big question. Can Mom sit in on your classes today? Cadell's face lit up. He agreed immediately, dropping a not-so-subtle hint that she definitely needed to hype him up if he nailed the lesson. Later that afternoon, Lilia stayed by his side, watching her son get to work, seeing Cadell completely locked in, absorbing every word. From the textbooks, she couldn't handle it. That concentrated face was just too precious. Before she knew it, period 1 was a wrap. Next up, the new tutor. She introduced herself as Belle, and honestly, she gave off total sweetheart vibes. But those earrings caught Lilia's attention. Despite Belle's friendly demeanor, Lilia wondered if her own paranoia was just spillover from what the maid had whispered earlier. Suddenly, she overheard Belle gushing about how freaking cute Cadell was today. Belle froze, realizing she'd broken character, and scrambled to apologize. Lilia cut her off. Hey, no need for sorry. My son's cuteness is powerful. I get why you couldn't hold back. He really is, Belle admitted, adorable and talented. I really hope I can stay his teacher for a long time. Lilia beamed, thrilled that someone else was becoming a Cadell stan. But then, she noticed. Belle's hands red, raw, and shaking. Belle explained she'd rushed over the second she got the recommendation letter, having zero clue the winter here was this brutal. Lilia didn't hesitate. She ordered the maid to grab some heavy winter gear. Stat. A few moments later, Belle was bundled up in thick layers, profoundly grateful for Lilia's kindness. Finally, the lesson could actually begin. Watching them click so well, Lilia felt her anxiety melt away. But later that evening, as Belle headed home, a massive blizzard hit. She shuddered, thinking she would have turned into a popsicle without the Duchess's coat. Stepping inside, she froze. A woman with fiery red hair was waiting. Duchess Charity. She smirked at Belle. Stopped by on my way home. I'm the one who got you into the Duke's mansion, remember? Naturally, I have to make sure you're not messing up my reputation. It's your first time in this region, right? Belle nodded nervously. Yes, the Duchess is an angel. She even sorted out this housing. She sat in on the young master's class today. She's so beautiful and thoughtful. It explains why the kid is such a dream. Usually, kids just scream and refuse to learn. I've literally been hit by students before. But him? He saw me and wanted to start studying immediately. He said the second we finished, he wanted to go see his mom. That's why I showed him a souvenir I picked up in the East. You see bracelets like that everywhere over there. They give them to people they cherish. The young master took that to heart. After class, he begged me to teach him how to make one, specifically to give it to the Duchess. I saw her wearing it today. Truly, thank you so much for landing me this job. Duchess Charity suddenly let out a maniacal, unhinged laugh, her eyes darkening as she recalled a humiliating memory. Back then, she had spewed some truly cruel words at Lilia, and in the end, her apology was flat out ignored. She had hit rock bottom. Snapping back to reality, she grabbed Belle aggressively, switching to a fake apology. Oops, did I scare you? You're trembling. Belle looked at her, terrified, and stammered that she was just cold. Charity nodded. Yeah, the cold here is unforgiving for newbies. But you really love those earrings, don't you? Belle touched them instinctively. Yes, they're a precious gift from you. You told me I needed to look the part to enter the Duke's mansion. My own stuff is cheap, so thank you for giving me something so valuable. Charity waved it off dismissively. Just try not to get fired before winter ends. I have one other question. The Duke, he's on an expedition. When exactly is he coming back? Belle froze, completely stumped. Ideally, a tutor wouldn't know that kind of intel. Charity scoffed. I'm leaving. Next time I visit, you better have an answer. Meanwhile, an assistant dropped by to deliver documents and found Lilia looking super stressed. He asked what was eating at her. She confessed she wanted to take Cadel out, but aside from stiff, noble visits, she'd barely ever gone out solo. The assistant, citing the recent invasions, suggested she stay on lockdown in the mansion. But if she was desperate for fresh air, he'd scout some safe zones. He took on the mission. Days later, he presented Lilia with a stack of photos and location intel. After scanning through them, the maid hyped up one specific spot. Cadel chirped that anywhere with mom was paradise. Belle, seeing the options, was shocked the North actually had scenic spots. She felt way out of her league helping Lilia pick a vacation destination. Lilia shut that self-doubt down instantly. Don't sell yourself short. You're helping me. Purely out of kindness. Just keep being a great teacher to Cadel. Lilia smiled, her decision made. Cadel wanted the lowdown, asking if she had a specific spot in mind for their trip. The maid standing by didn't hesitate, loudly insisting they had to hit up Central Street. Lilia, curious about the hype, asked why that spot was the move. The maid painted a picture. Central Street was a total aesthetic, super charming, and absolutely packed with cool stuff for kids to explore. Cadel was instantly sold, dreaming about making core memories with his mom. Hearing his excitement, Lilia couldn't say no. Cadel added that he wanted Dad to come next time, convinced his father would return safe and sound soon. Next year, it'll be a family trip. But for now, they'd go on a scouting mission to find the best spots to show Dad later. Lilia knew the boy was masking his worry for his father. Just then, Belle stepped in, revealing a hair accessory she'd been holding onto. She explained her father's golden rule. If someone helps you, you pay it forward. That's why she brought this brooch with a purple crystal center, a perfect match for Lilia's eyes. It wasn't expensive, but she hoped Lilia would accept the vibe. Feeling the genuine gratitude radiating off her, Lilia took the gift and immediately clipped it into her hair. Does it look good on Mom? Cadel was the ultimate hype man, declaring, Mom slays in everything. Later that night, Belle skipped home, buzzing with happiness, only to find Duchess Charity waiting. Belle spilled the tea on the day's events, confirming the Duchess and the young lord were hitting Central Street. But Belle was clueless that as she spoke, the guy standing behind her was staring like a predator. Boom. Next second, she gets clocked in the back of the head. The attacker told Duchess Charity it was go time for the plan. When Belle came to, her head was pounding, and she realized she was bound hand and foot. Nearby, Charity and the thug were deep in a sketchy conversation. The thug was sweating Cadel's abilities, terrified by rumors that the kid had already unlocked his air powers. Duchess Charity laughed in his face for being scared of a 6-year-old. He argued that caution never hurt anyone, but she was impatient. She needed to see Lilia begging on her knees. Like, yesterday. The tutor we planted was spying through her earrings the whole time. I played the long game. Now, it's revenge season. Hearing this, Belle's heart sank. She had been a pawn, used to leak intel from the duchy. Duchess Charity ruthlessly ripped the earrings off Belle, sneering, I got you a job, didn't I? We helped each other out. Thanks to you, my vengeance is set, but I need cash for my new life. I'm done living like trash. Her twisted solution? Kidnap and sell the Duke's heir. Meanwhile, Lilia was stressing over Belle after getting a letter, claiming the maid had a nasty flu. Then, radio silence. The maid sent a doctor over, but nobody could get in touch. To make matters worse, Cadell was burning up with a fever from training too hard. It looked like the plaza trip was going to be cancelled, but who knew Cadell was built different? When Lilia walked in, he was dressed and ready. "Mom, we're rolling out, right? Wasn't that the plan?" Seeing his hyped-up face, she just asked him to promise he'd speak up if he felt sick. Cadell happily agreed. Moments later, they pulled up to the plaza. Seeing the massive crowds, Lilia told Cadell to grip her hand tight, but the kid had a secret mission. Before they left, the maid had reminded him that Mom's birthday was coming up, suggesting a surprise gift. The plan? Have the night cover for him. While he snuck off to buy the present, Cadell stared ahead, plotting. Lilia assumed he was just vibing on the hat shop ahead, so she suggested they check it out. Surprisingly, the cute hats inside fit him perfectly. Every single one was a look. Cadell remembered the maid's advice and used the moment, asking Mom to fetch a specific hat from the back. He signaled the guard and slipped out, but the guard didn't follow. In a flash, Cadell was isolated. Then, a stranger snatched him up, his vision blurred, fading to black. Meanwhile, Lilia was still browsing, totally oblivious. She found this adorable chick-themed beanie, imagining how cute Cadell would look. She turned to show him, but he was gone. She asked the knight, who revealed Cadell went to buy her a birthday surprise. Lilia had to act clueless and wait for the surprise. She bought a pile of gifts for Cadell, but time passed, and he didn't return. Suddenly, the knight sprinted back in a panic. Cadell had been taken by an unknown assailant. Lilia went into full commander mode, ordering the knights to lock down the plaza and find her son. She didn't wait. She bolted into the crowd herself, frantic, the guilt of letting go of his hand, eating her alive. What if Cadell was the price all along? Suddenly, a corner of the plaza erupted in flames. She bolted toward the blaze, convinced it was Cadell's distress signal, never suspecting she was sprinting straight into a villainous trap. Moments later, Lilia found herself dragged into a shack. The mastermind, Duchess Charity from those past gatherings. Without a word, Charity stomped on Lilia, crushing her beneath a boot. Cadell watched in pure agony, while Lilia desperately pleaded for his freedom. The Duchess isn't the prize the heir is. Does it hurt watching your precious boy fade away? Right in front of your eyes? Lilia screamed, voice cracking. I'm in agony. I could die right now. Does that satisfy you? Duchess Charity cackled like a maniac. I didn't expect revenge to be this dull, though I owe a thank you to Belle. That idiot tutor? Lilia wondered how they were connected, but Charity wasn't in the mood for story time. She went back to brutally kicking Lilia until a henchman returned to stop her, grabbing Cadell to haul him away. Seeing his mom beaten on the floor broke him. Cadell burst into terrified sobs. Lilia could only watch helplessly as he was dragged off. Just like her own mother once did, she prayed wildly, "Who will save my boy?" Suddenly, the hairpin in her locks flared with light, slicing through her bindings. They were stunned. Since when could Lilia use magic? Magic yanked Cadell right back to Lilia's side. She checked him for injuries, ready to bolt, but Cadell froze, staring at his mom's wounds. "This is all my fault," he murmured. Lilia felt a searing heat radiating from his hands. Cadell jerked his hand away, screaming, "I acted on my own. I promised to listen to you. I'm a bad kid now. You're gonna hate me again, aren't you?" Lilia tried to soothe him, but he was too far gone to hear her. Flames erupted from his body, spiraling out of control and encircling them in an instant. The entire room became an inferno. Just then, the knights burst onto the scene, reporting to Lilia that they'd captured the assassins and thrown them in the dungeon. Seeing the blazing chaos in front of them, they tried to evacuate Lilia first, but she refused, remembering the head doctor's warning to stop the boy from using his powers. She ordered the knights to clear the plaza and sweep for accomplices, while she stayed behind to calm Cadell's rampage. Without hesitating, she reached straight into the roaring flames, shocked as the fire parted around her hand. "Mom, stay back. You got hurt because of me." Lilia quickly comforted him, telling him how kind his heart was. He turned away, sobbing, "But I can't do anything right. I'm just a useless kid." Lilia pulled him into a tight embrace. "That's not true. I see how hard you try. Look, you parted the fire so I wouldn't get burned. I just want to see you smile. You are my most beloved son. I'm the one who failed to protect you. Sadly, our outing ends here. Let's go home." Cadell finally settled down. The villains had already passed out from the heat. Lilia ordered them hauled to the mansion for revival. Days later, she penned a letter for the assistant to deliver to the emperor. He knew she gave him this task specifically so no one else would see it. Days later, in the palace office, the emperor received a package marked top secret. They said it was from the Duchess. He was curious. What kind of letter warranted such a high classification? After reading it, he smirked. No wonder. Kieran follows her around like a loyal puppy. In the letter, Lilia detailed the incident and proposed an information trade. That would definitely pique his interest. The Emperor was already tracking the northern unrest, guessing it was linked to this attack. Plus, he was dying to see if his friend's one-sided crush was finally paying off, so he signaled a subordinate to contact Lilia. He'd meet her after sunrise. Before they dig their roots into my empire, I'll rip them out completely. Meanwhile, the knight briefed Lilia on the interrogation. Duchess Charity was so terrified, she sang like a bird without any pressure. They even got Belle's location and had already dispatched a squad to drag her back. But the trail didn't end with those two. The puppet master was the Lucius Dark Guild. They had approached Charity while she was hiring mercenaries and planted the idea to kidnap the young master of the ducal house as revenge. Lilia considered waiting for the duke to return to handle this, but in her past life, the Lucius Guild never dared provoke them. Passive waiting wasn't an option anymore. She decided to call in the big guns. The Emperor himself was the only one who could handle this. The next day, his reply arrived, leaving Lilia completely speechless. She knew dropping that intel would get her a palace summons, but she never expected an invitation quite like this. With Kieran, she kept quiet purely to stop him from going into full jealous husband mode. While that drama wrapped up nicely, the real trash needed taking out. Duchess Charity. Lilia stormed into the dungeon and found the toxic couple already screaming at each other. According to the intel, their own son had been dumped at an orphanage. In Lilia's eyes, these two weren't just unfit parents. They barely qualified as human beings. Seething with rage, she snapped, "What is this circus? You two still have the energy to fight?" Duchess Charity immediately played the victim card, claiming the Dark Guild manipulated her like a puppet. Lilia couldn't believe the audacity. Even at rock bottom, there was zero remorse, just a desperate attempt to dodge the blame. That's when the husband decided to throw his wife under the bus too, whining that Charity forced him into it for a quick cash grab. He tried to argue he didn't technically hurt Cadell, hoping for a free pass. Lilia shut that down instantly. "You don't know the meaning of repentance. You just point fingers at each other. I have zero mercy left. You tried to steal my son. Now you pay the price." Leaving them to rot, Lilia rushed to Cadell's room. He was still burning up with fever. Suddenly, a voice echoed, "He looks like he's in agony." Lilia whipped around to see the witch standing there. She knew the witch never showed up. Without an agenda, instinct took over, and she shielded Cadell's sleeping form with her own body. "Relax. I'm not here to collect. Yet. He's suffering, and I can fix it." Lilia, though suspicious, stepped back. The witch wove her magic, calming the chaotic energy inside him. Cadell's breathing steadied instantly. He tugged weakly at Lilia's sleeve, murmuring that he was sleepy. Lilia smoothed his hair, whispering, "Mommy's right here. Sweet dreams." She turned to thank the mysterious guest. The witch waved it off. "No thanks needed. Consider it payment for the entertainment you provided. Watching your destiny unfold is better than any theater, don't you think? One tiny ripple can change the whole ocean." Lilia glanced at the brooch Belle gave her, realizing the witch had been using it as a spy cam the whole time. The witch's tone shifted. "But that's not why I'm here. Lilia, you lost the bet. Per our deal, it's collection time." Lilia braced herself, ready to trade her own life to keep her family safe. "I want the soul that doesn't exist in the original timeline. I'm taking the child growing in your womb." The realization hit Lilia like a truck. The constant drowsiness, the craving for sour foods, she was pregnant. It's a fair price. This kid wasn't in your destiny anyway. You can live a perfectly normal life without it. But logic didn't matter. This was her baby, and she knew Kieran would be over the moon. She stared the witch down. "Destiny or not, this life exists now. I'm not handing over my child. I can get you anything else, something even more valuable, if you just name it." The witch remained cold as ice. "I want the anomaly, the child, that defies fate. However, since you're begging so beautifully, I'll give you a chance. Let's make a new bet. A chance to cancel all debts. Interested?" To save her unborn baby, Lilia had no choice but to nod, but she knew the Winter Witch never played a game she couldn't win. The odds were definitely rigged. "Here's the wager. Guess whether the Duke survives his current expedition or dies." The words felt like a punch to the gut. Spoiler alert. "I'm betting on the latter. Still, want to play?" It was a twisted choice between her husband and her unborn child. She refused to lose the happiness she had fought so hard to build. "You see the future. You know the ending. This isn't a bet. It's a scam. Tell me, what are my actual odds of winning?" The witch looked genuinely amused by her boldness. "This bet is heavily stacked in my favor. It's true. So, I'll give you a hint on how to save him. There's a rat next to your husband, leaking intel to the enemy. Because of that spy, the Duke is walking into an ambush. The blade waiting for him is coated in a foreign poison, one that guarantees days of excruciating torture before death. Only a specific antidote can stop it. If you're scared, you can always fold." Desperate, Lilia begged the witch to give her the Who are you? Some kind of spy? If I spilled the beans, you'd have the upper hand. But here's the deal. Purge the poison, and your hubby lives. Clock's ticking, sweetie. You've got 5 days. Lilia didn't waste a second begging the witch to spill the antidote's formula. Armed with the witch's cryptic clue, Lilia took matters into her own hands. Her maid tried to block the door, but Lilia was unstoppable. She rolled up to Count Hal's estate solo. I need to see the Count. A figure in the shadows stepped out. Long trek for this hour. I'm Count Hal. What's the emergency? Forgive the late-night intrusion. But this is life or death. She barely finished her sentence before Count Hal dropped everything to say yes. She was shook. He explained why. You saved my daughter from that illness. I've got your back. No questions asked. Karma really came through. She asked for access to his greenhouse because she was hunting for a specific bloom. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Kieran was itching to wrap up this war and head home. Victory was close, but his gut was churning. He couldn't shake the dread about his wife and son back home. Just as he hit the hay, a shadow crept in. The intruder loomed over the bed, raising a jagged blade, ready to strike. But Kieran's instincts were razor-sharp. He dodged the steel and slammed a counterattack. Right into the assassin. He clocked the weapon immediately. Barbarian craftsmanship. Wait, aren't you a recruit in my own knighthood? You infiltrated just for this? The assassin sneered. You got it. We share blood, yet you slaughter us. Kieran's eyes went ice-cold. Tragic. I absolutely loathe the cursed blood in my veins. You guys pillage non-stop. Is it any wonder the world sees you as monsters? The more I suffered in the Empire, the more I despised you. But as a kid, I desperately hoped the rumors were wrong. I tried to understand the tribe. I even asked my mother, but she was blinded by power and cash. Her staff weren't humans to her. They were toys. That ducal mansion was just her twisted playground. Every time I begged for mercy for the servants, I got the whip. When I finally took the title, I tried to trust you people, but you saw weakness and plotted an invasion. Typical. Suddenly, the assassin, exploiting Kieran's monologue, flung a hidden throwing knife while Kieran was distracted. Venting his trauma, the blade grazed him. A knight outside heard the commotion and rushed in to tackle the thug. Back to Lilia, she whipped up the antidote, following the witch's blueprint perfectly. The witch had explained every step, and even sent a bird as a GPS just because she found their drama entertaining. You bet your life, the witch had said. So I gotta keep the game fair. Antidote in hand and bird leading the way. Lilia booked it to the front lines. She was praying to every god out there that she wasn't too late to save her man. The bird led her straight to the tent. There was Kieran, out cold. In his haze, he thought she was a deathbed hallucination. Lilia wept, seeing him fading fast. She tried to pour the cure, but his jaw was locked. Waiting meant death. Desperate, she downed the potion herself in one gulp and locked lips with him to transfer the liquid. Kieran stirred, thinking it was a fever dream, but the heaviness vanished. He was healing, but Lilia insisted on dragging him to the tent for a proper checkup. She looked for the guide bird to thank it, but Kieran's sharp eyes caught the glitch. That's no bird. Poof, the bird morphed into the witch. Lilia jumped, and Kieran immediately shielded her. Terrified the witch was here to collect a soul, but Lilia stepped out, radiating boss energy. Hey witch, I beat the clock. I don't owe you a thing. The witch grinned. True, you won. I'm not a sore loser. The bet's done. Go live your happily ever after. Hearing that, Lilia finally exhaled. The nightmare was over. Then, the witch leaned in close and whispered, Since you entertained me, here's a freebie. A glimpse into the future. Your future. Daughter, she'll have the Duke's silver hair and your eyes. Now, I'm off to watch other souls stay alive. When Lilia woke up properly, she was tucked in the tent, finally rested. Kieran said they'd pack up and leave as soon as the mess was cleared. Lilia decided to keep the baby news under wraps until they were safe. Days later, back at the estate, Cadell rushed them. But first, he had a bone to pick. You ditched me to find Dad. I'm totally mad at you. Lilia ruffled his hair, teasingly. Oh, really? I was gonna tell Cadell the big secret first, but if you're grumpy, maybe I won't. First up on the apology tour, Dad. The moment Cadell hears the news, he swears he's not mad, instantly transforming into a little angel to give Kieran a massive hug. I'm just glad you made it back in one piece, he beams. Tonight, once we crush dinner, we gotta hit the garden for a stroll. Oh, and I'm totally crashing with Mom tonight. But let's be real, the main thing on his mind was Mom's big secret. Facing his puppy dog eyes, Lilia caves and spills the tea. Cadell's face practically glows as he keeps pestering her. For real? Seriously? He gingerly pokes her tummy. No way, my baby sis is in there? I'm gonna be a big bro in a few months. Kieran freezes, totally blindsided by the news. Lilia just shoots him a playful grin, admitting she planned a big reveal at dinner, but Cadell beat her to the punch. Suddenly, the kid bolts out of the room. Way too hyped to wait. He needs to prep gifts for his future sis right now. Dinner? Completely forgotten. Meanwhile, Kieran shifts into protective mode, gripping her shoulders with intensity. You're eating for two now. How could you dive into a danger zone like that? Lilia pulls the ultimate trump card, the bump. Shh, the baby can hear you. You want our kid thinking their dad is a monster? Kieran deflates, totally defeated, and just begs her to steer clear of trouble next time. Later that night, Lilia pulls out that letter. From the Emperor. Kieran scans it, then torches the paper without a second thought, scoffing that it's nothing but useless trash, and she shouldn't even sweat it. Turns out, the witch was watching the whole show today. It brings back memories of why she made that final wager with Lilia. The truth? It was Lilia's mom. She traded her own soul, desperate to stop the witch from snatching her daughter's joy. She knew a happy family reunion wasn't in the cards for this lifetime. But if she reincarnated as Lilia's baby, she could keep loving her and grant Lilia's wish for a daughter, the perfect loop. The witch couldn't help but clap back at the time. Thought you were some pure saint. Turns out you're actually pretty slick. Still, she took the deal. Looking back, it was wild. Finding another soul that fascinating, 1 in a million shot. So, she actually wished them a happily ever after. Fast forward a bit, and Lilia's bump is popping. Snow is falling, but the chill is gone. Looks like this kid is aiming for a warm spring debut. But lately, the vibes are off. 5 days ago, she asks about Cadell, and Belle starts acting super shady. 3 days ago, she tries to go for a walk, and the maid practically blocks the door. 2 days ago, she hunts for Kieran, and his assistant claims he's MIA. It feels like the whole house is ghosting her on purpose. Suddenly, the tears just start flowing. Right on cue, Cadell bursts in. Seeing the waterworks, he panics, apologizes profusely, and tells Mom to follow him if she wants answers. The hallway is glowing with pink lights. Dad set this all up. Cadell grins. Lilia looks ahead and spots Kieran standing by a beautifully decked-out pergola. He walks up, pouring his heart out. I never gave you the proposal you deserved, he tells Lilia. Time to set the record straight. Suddenly, it clicks the secrets, the sneaking around. They were prepping this. Hearing him say it, she's on cloud 9. Kieran pulls her in close. Come spring, after the baby's here, we're getting married properly. The big day rolls around fast. There's Cadell, proudly holding his baby sister on the sidelines. And just like that, the perfect ending to their story.